What's up guys, this is your favorite fanfic YouTuber, the Fanfic Majesty. Join my Discord if you want to chat and share your thoughts, the link is in the description. 12 MB Chapter 333 Meat Bun Prince Sharkstar said loudly. We were originally protected by the Black Justice Pirates. When did the world government ever control our life and death? Now Master Cheng Cheng has obviously reached a consensus with the Revolutionary Army to overthrow the rule of the world government together. We must stand up and express our attitude no matter what. After saying that, the left minister and the right minister agreed at the same time. It should be so. The other ministers are also smart people. They know that in this situation, they must take the initiative to jump out and become independent. Otherwise, if the 5 emperors who protect them think that they have other ideas, life will be difficult in the future. The unusually tall King Neptune stood up, glanced at everyone, and his voice echoed through the hall. If this is the case, then immediately issue a declaration of independence to the whole world. At the same time, Alabasta Palace. The setting sun shines on the roof of the palace, making it magnificent. The sun shines into the hall through the door, lengthening the shadows of the ministers. Queen Wei Wei sat on the throne, calmly looking at the sunshine outside the door, and said, Since Brother Cheng Cheng has expressed his support for an independent country, the time has come and it is time for us to declare independence. But this is not enough, I think. If we declare independence, we will definitely form an alliance with the Revolutionary Army. Their military strength was severely damaged some time ago. Therefore, I have decided to send 300,000 troops to support the Revolutionary Army. What do you think? There was silence in the main hall. They had guessed about the independence of the world government, but sending troops to support the Revolutionary Army really surprised them. The guard captain Ikaram pondered for a while, then stepped forward and said, Your Majesty the Queen, sending 300,000 troops is a big number. Our Alabasta area is already a desert area. Even if all the fleets in the port city are temporarily deployed, I'm afraid it's still far behind. Moreover, most of our ships, fishing boats and merchant ships, can only be equipped with a very small number of artillery. Queen Vivi smiled and said, I have also considered this issue. You can contact Sabo, Chief of General Staff of the Revolutionary Army, and ask them to send a warship to pick up the people. Ikaram said happily. It seems that Her Majesty the Queen is already prepared. In this case, there is nothing to worry about. The other ministers also laughed. They absolutely supported the Queen's order, not to mention that this order was to support the country's savior. Advertisement Queen Vivi smiled and said, Of course, sitting in this position, it is difficult not to think about long-term planning. She looked at the ground, her eyes were moving, her features were picturesque, and she was sitting on the golden throne, like a swaying golden lotus, elegant and refined, free from dust. The shadows of the ministers are getting longer and longer, and the sunset shining through the entrance of the hall is getting redder and redder. In that red light, little bits of dust are floating. Brother Cheng Cheng, I have been waiting for you. Tarkan Kingdom, Royal City. The roofs of the buildings here are almost all pointed and conical. From a distance, they look like pagodas buckled on the ground. As the sun sets in the west, most of the pedestrians have gone home to have dinner. After a tiring day, they go home to reunite with their wives, daughters and their families. There are very few pedestrians on the street, just a few loose people. Shop owners on both sides of the street were busy cleaning and tidying up tables, chairs and stalls. Those shopkeepers who were more diligent helped their neighbors clean the streets. Because there is a lot of precipitation here, rainwater often washes the streets, so there is almost no dust, and there will be no dusty scenes when cleaning. At the end of the street, a man in black walked slowly from a distance. The shopkeepers who were smiling and cleaning all looked at the man in black in the distance with confusion. They had never seen this man before. Their area was remote and few outsiders came. Even the pirates who occasionally pass by here only buy supplies in the port cities of the Tarkan Kingdom, and there are very few outsiders who come to the royal city. When the man in black slowly came nearby, they noticed that he was an old man with white hair. Looking at the old man's heavy footsteps, Harvey, the owner of the bun shop, patted his thigh gently and said with emotion, Another poor homeless old man. After saying that, he quickly turned around and returned to the shop. There were 2 cages of meat buns placed on the yellowed wooden table. There was a faint white steam rising above the buns. He was originally going to take them home for his daughter to eat. At this moment, he picked up the meat bun without hesitation and thought to himself, Advertisement Zhaolin, you can only eat it tomorrow. Anyway, you can eat it whenever you want. If you don't eat meat buns, you can eat other things. If the old man doesn't eat steamed buns, he might go hungry. After walking out of the store, he thought again, turned back and took a bowl of water in a big white bowl, then walked out and held it in his hand. The old man just walked with his head down, seemingly uninterested in everything around him. He didn't even bother to take a second look at your spotless street. Harvey was holding the bun in one hand and a big white bowl in the other. He sighed when he saw that the old man was covered in dust and his hair was curly and messy and almost turned white. What a pitiful man. He has to leave his hometown at such an old age. The other shopkeepers around also stopped what they were doing and looked at the old man with pity. Harvey took a step forward, stood in front of the old man, handed over the buns in his hand, and said with a smile, Old man, don't dislike these 2 cages of buns. They're still warm, so eat them while they're hot. It's a bit unlucky that you came here. My shop has just closed its stall. Otherwise, I could let you sit on the table and eat. The floor is clean, so I'll sit at the door and eat slowly before going on the road. I saw the old man slowly raising his head, and it turned out to be a young man with a handsome appearance and beautiful features. The owner of the bun shop suddenly widened his eyes, and accidentally dropped the big white bowl in his hand, and said in surprise, You turn out to be a handsome young man. When the other shopkeepers heard the sound, they immediately stepped forward and looked at the old man carefully. After seeing the handsome face of the man in black, several of the charming proprietresses immediately became excited. If this appearance is washed, cleaned, and put on clean clothes, he will definitely look like a pretty boy. Cheng Cheng's eyes narrowed, and the large white bowl that quickly fell to the ground hovered in the air. Only some of the water inside swayed out and dripped down the wall of the bowl. Under the setting sun, the water surface turned red. Everyone's eyes widened instantly and they stared at the white bowl dumbfounded. Harvey, the owner of the steamed stuffed bun shop, swallowed hard and didn't know what was going on. For a moment, his hands holding 2 baskets of steamed buns froze in the air. Cheng Cheng's clear eyes stared at the 8 buns in front of him. They were bright in color, and the white and transparent thin skin seemed to break open with a light touch, and the aroma instantly hit his face. Without saying a word, he took the 2 steamed buns with both hands, sat in the middle of the road, and took a bite of each, with the delicious soup flowing out of his lips. Chapter 334 Sakura Kingdom. Under everyone's shocked gazes, in less than 2 minutes, Cheng Cheng stuffed both cages of meat buns into his mouth. Finally, he reached out and picked off the big white bowl suspended in the air, and drank it all in one gulp. Ah, it's delicious. It's been a long time since I've had such delicious buns. Cheng Cheng patted his belly, sat on the ground contentedly and said with a smile. During this period, after he left the Brandy Kingdom, he kept checking in. In less than a week, he completed 6 system tasks, went to 6 different countries, walked through virgin forests, climbed barren mountains, and dived into the depths of the seabed. The system also rewards Sun Fist, Kaio Fist, Vitality Slash, Fairy Armor, Wind God Sword, and Defense Magic Circle 3 Pillar Gods. Except for Kaio Fist, which can significantly improve his strength, these things are not very helpful, but even so, they can improve much faster than his own boring practice. The water of life in the Great Holy Grail has been rising, and the speed is not slow. Every time it is full, he will water it directly on the Phantom Beast Spirit Tree. Now there are no less than 10 devil fruits hanging on the branches. Just glancing at it, there was no very powerful Phantom Beast species. What he wanted was the Phantom Beast species that could directly crush IM. He had to win without any doubt. The owner of the bun shop rubbed his hands and asked, "Young man, where do you lie from? How did it end up like this? Was it robbed by pirates at sea?" Cheng Cheng smiled and shook his head. Along the way, he only wanted to complete the sign and task. He didn't pay attention to his image. He didn't know how he ended up like this without knowing it. He smiled bitterly. On the sea, there is no pirate who dares to rob me. A plump woman next to her squeezed through the crowd and came to Cheng Cheng. Her beautiful eyes moved and she said softly, "This little brother, I happen to have a big wooden bucket at home. I think you haven't taken a bath for a long time. I just want to take a hot bath. I can give you a back rub." As he spoke, his body swayed, and suddenly the waves surged, and he said softly, "You can rub it wherever you want, sister is very soft." The group of big men around him suddenly understood each other and smiled at each other. This widow was famous throughout the royal city, but according to rumors, not many people could actually eat her. Cheng Cheng stood on tiptoe and stood out from the crowd. He said, "If you don't eat delicious food like the Empress at home, why come here to eat this?" He strode forward, waved to the crowd with his back, and said loudly, "Boss, your steamed buns are very good. I will come here often in the future." At this time, the sun had set and the sky was dark. Cheng Cheng's figure, dressed in black, flashed and turned into a black shadow and disappeared from everyone's eyes. The woman's eyes flashed, and she stamped her feet vigorously, but her face was not very angry. She smiled and said, "It's not like she's still a chick." Advertisement. The owner of the weapons shop was a middle-aged man who had sailed on the Grand Route in his early years. He was tall and muscular, and his muscles looked like they were made of steel. He frowned as he watched Cheng Cheng disappear. His back was covered with sweat, and he said in a deep voice, "As a woman who doesn't know how high the sky is, I advise you to stay away from that man in black again. Once you anger him, the entire Talking Kingdom won't be able to bury you with you." "Ah!" the woman exclaimed. Looking at the middle-aged man's serious expression, it didn't look like he was joking. She asked timidly, "Who is the man in black? Is he very powerful?" The owner of the weapon shop sighed and said coldly, "It's better not to say it. If you say it, you, ****T, will be so scared that you will wet your pants." The woman rolled her eyes blurry. "If you don't say yes, I won't believe that I can't pry your mouth open." The bun shop owner just smiled honestly, turned around, closed the shop door, and locked it. He still had a headache about how to explain to his daughter when he went back. Night, Sakura Kingdom. There are cherry blossoms growing everywhere, and the entire island is pink. A breeze blows, and the petals sway in the wind and slowly fall to the ground. A pink world, like a fairyland. Under the white moonlight, with a flash of white light, Cheng Cheng appeared under a huge cherry blossom tree. A petal floated right in front of his eyes. He stretched out his palm and let the pink petals fall on his palm. The unique fragrance of cherry blossoms hit his face, making him wake up a lot. In the past 6 days, in order to quickly complete the sign and task, he had not slept at all. Even with his strong mental strength, he felt dizzy at the moment. But he felt that he couldn't sleep yet. After the heavy sleepiness, he just ate those 2 steamed buns, but he felt less sleepy. Thick cherry blossom petals were scattered on the soft grass. He slowly slid down against the huge cherry blossom tree, squatted on the ground, grabbed a handful of petals on the ground, and whispered, "System, there are at least tens of thousands of trees in the Sakura Kingdom. Which tree do you think the sign in location is? Uncle, you need to find this question yourself, otherwise it will be meaningless. Close black lens bracket. Your uncle's, uncle, I'm here. Close black lens bracket advertisement. Cheng Cheng took a deep breath, feeling helpless. I have no choice but to try one by one. Pointing his toes, he floated lightly up to the huge cherry blossom tree behind him, stepped on the branches, and his body swayed with the wind, as if he had become one with the cherry blossom tree. After pausing on the branch for a while, he didn't hear the system's beep. He sighed. Sure enough, it can't be accomplished so easily. After saying that, Cheng Cheng bent his legs and flew out, turning into a black shadow and flying to the next tree. The soldiers on night duty on the distant city wall kept yawning, and sleepiness surged over him. In a daze, he saw a black shadow under the moon beating continuously, passing through the tops of every cherry blossom tree, like a legendary dark knight elf. He said drowsily, "This dream is so real." The ruins of Pengu City were covered with darkness and silence. 100 meters below this place, the lights are bright as day. Hundreds of figures in white clothes were busy, walking around. They were all armed, with only one eye exposed. For these people, in this unknown underground base, their biological clocks have long been messed up. No one knows whether it is day or night in the outside world, and no one cares. In the middle of the laboratory, there is a red light. The crimson flaming phoenix slowly flaps its wings. Every time it flaps, little bits of firelight will fall down. The scorching high temperature around them melted the surrounding tables, chairs, experimental instruments, and various glass test tubes, and bursts of distortion and blur appeared in the air. Outside an insulated glass barrier, I.M., dressed in black robe, was lying on a chair with various pipes inserted into his body. Green fluorescence is constantly being input into I.M.'s body through the pipe, and the other end of the pipe is connected to the crystal ball. Only a small part of Lu Yingying's immortal power is left, and it is almost exhausted. I.M. opened his eyes, his red pupils were cold and heartless, as if there was no life at all. He asked lightly, his voice was surprisingly soft. How long until the next resurrection of the little girl? Vegapunk, who was wearing a white coat, had messy hair, and stared at the monitor in front of him. A red light flashed on a columnar energy grid, and he would soon reach 100%, he said in a deep voice. An hour at most. Chapter 335 Black Snake Binding Spirit. I.M., whose body was covered with pipes, stopped talking, closed his red pupils again, and remained motionless on the recliner, like a corpse that had been dead for hundreds of years. The entire underground laboratory fell into silence again, and only the busy footsteps of hundreds of people in white could be heard. These people in white usually work more complexly, and at the same time they also represent the highest technological fields in the world. Most of their usual research is on genetic engineering related to devil fruits. It was here that they assisted Vegapunk in solving the transmission conditions of devil fruit, discovered the blood factor, and also developed the first artificial devil fruit here. As well as various other research on human beings such as giant experiments, antivirus suits, and mechanical transformation experiments. Every research here is something that the outside world dare not imagine. Some of them came voluntarily, and some were forced to come, but they all have one thing in common: they are all geniuses with an IQ of over 130. When they first came, those who were forced to come here had the idea of dawdling and living here one day at a time. But as time went by, the research results they obtained shocked even themselves. No scientist in the world can refuse to have their hypothesis confirmed. More and more research inventions are appearing, which unknowingly inspires the unique arrogance of scientists in their hearts. Slowly everyone is involved in research, not caring about worldly affairs, they just want to do their own research. From time to time, these people in white would look at the fire phoenix. Even though they were wearing insulating suits and fully armed, they could clearly feel the heat in the air. Some people's sweat flows down their legs and fills their feet. Their feet sway when they walk, and it won't take long before they have to go to drain the water. Several researchers in white clothes in the corner looked at each other and whispered. Did you see that little girl is really pitiful? This must be the third time she has turned into a flame bird, right? Yes, it's the third time, and it's getting hotter here every time. Even though we're wearing insulated clothes, it's so hot. The temperature outside is at least over 60 degrees, let alone the temperature near the firebird. I can't even don't dare go near there. That little girl is no longer a human being, she's just a ball of fire. What's so pitiful? She's so hot that she's killing me. The laboratory is such a big place and there's no place to cool down. I pity her, who will pity me? Advertisement. Several people were silent. It was indeed getting hotter and hotter these days. Especially today, it was so hot that they couldn't bear it. Even the desert at noon would be cooler than here. In the middle of the football field-sized laboratory, the flaming phoenix grew bigger and bigger, and its screams echoed throughout the underground space. As the crimson flame wings were incited, circles of flames spread rapidly around, the air became distorted, and under the wash of heat waves, all surrounding items were reduced to ashes. The red flames scorched the surrounding ground black, emitting black smoke and emitting a pungent smell of burning. Dr. Vegapunk stood behind the insulated glass with a solemn expression, staring at the red flashing energy grid on the screen, narrowing his eyes and saying in a deep voice. It's coming back to life. As soon as he finished speaking, the thickened insulating glass in front of him clicked, and fine cracks appeared, covering the entire glass in an instant. Boom! There was a loud noise, and red light flashed throughout the laboratory. The fire phoenix looked up to the sky and let out a shrill scream. Its two 10-meter-long flame wings slowly closed in front of it, and then suddenly opened, spraying a huge heat wave to the surroundings. The crimson flames instantly distorted the air, like a volcano erupting, surging towards the surroundings, swallowing up all the experimental equipment in an instant and drowning it in the sea of fire. The researchers in white clothes looked at the surging sea of fire with wide eyes, yelled and ran away, their eyes full of fear. It's just that their escape speed was a little too slow in front of this sea of fire. In an instant, they were submerged in the flames, their whole bodies struggled hard, and they screamed pitifully. For a moment, the laboratory turned into a sea of fire, with screams and ghosts crying and wolves howling one after another, like a sea of fire and purgatory in hell. There was a slight vibration on the ground 100 meters above, and a burst of dust was stirred up in the ruins. A wall that was already crumbling lost its balance and collapsed. Dr. Vegapunk looked at the sea of fire in front of him, his eyes widened, and his eyes were red. Even if he was about to face death, he did not take a step back, but showed a surprised look. When the sea of fire was half a meter in front of him, a black spherical barrier instantly enveloped him. The front of him became pitch black, and he couldn't feel the hot air from the outside world. He seemed to be isolated from the outside world, he murmured. Advertisement. Why is this little girl's flame getting stronger and stronger? The intensity was more than doubled when she was resurrected last time. It's impossible. Logically speaking, the less immortal power she has, the weaker her flame ability should be. That's right, what's the point? Is there some secret to this devil fruit that I don't know about? When the crimson flame rushed towards IM on the recliner, it seemed to have encountered a wall of air, and automatically bypassed IM and rushed to the back. IM closed her eyes and frowned slightly. What kind of phantom beast is this? Can it really be immortal? But the power of immortality is almost draining me, isn't it? IM sighed, still unable to understand. Red flames like magma filled the entire laboratory. The red light of the fire phoenix flashed and transformed into the appearance of Tuanzi. Only the flames on the naked Tuanzi transformed into a red gauze dress, which floated with the heat wave below, like a fire spirit in flames. Tuanzi has disheveled hair, his jade white feet are on the surface of the sea of flames below. A pair of dozens of meters long flame wings behind his back are slowly flashing, and a pair of eyes are shining with red flames. She slowly turned her head and looked at IM on the recliner, slowly raised her slender arm, made a sword with one hand and pointed at IM, and said sarcastically, "I am the immortal." Then her sword finger suddenly pointed toward the void in front of her, and the entire sea of fire under her feet instantly surged and boiled, and the flames from all directions rushed towards IM. In an instant, the sea of fire engulfed IM on the lounge chair, and the flames surged into the sky. IM lay down without getting up, with a calm face. The raging sea of fire stopped 1 meter away from him, as if there was an invisible wall of air blocking the flames. He opened his mouth slightly and exhaled a stream of black smoke, which swirled to form a black circle. The inside of the circle was extremely dark, without any light, and exuded a mysterious aura, like an entrance to another world. Then the black hole emitted an astonishing suction force, sucking in all the surrounding sea of fire. After a few breaths, the sea of fire in the entire laboratory completely dissipated. Black snake binding spirit. IM's lips moved slightly, and a plain voice sounded. The black hole that was incompatible with the surrounding space twisted and transformed, forming a phosphorescent snake, shaking its tail, and rushed towards Tuanzi. Chapter 336. Today's Holy Land. Tuanzi's eyes were cold as he looked at the black snake flying towards him like lightning. He suddenly waved his right hand and formed a crimson flaming long sword in his empty palm. Its appearance was somewhat similar to the Dragon Slayer sword. The flaming sword slashed quickly, forming a dense sword net in front of her. She snorted coldly. "Watch me kill your little snake." A sword was swung out, and a whistling sound was heard. It landed exactly 7 inches away from the black snake, and the black snake instantly broke into 2 pieces. However, the black snake did not dissipate, but continued to twist. The snake's head and tail transformed into 2 black snakes again, and rushed towards Tuanzi. Tuanzi waved his sword to stop him again, but it was too late. 2 black snakes quickly rotated around him from top to bottom, like 2 black ropes, binding Tuanzi tightly, and the flame wings behind him also dissipated. "Old guy, you are a fool. Every time I die, I will become stronger. If you have the ability, keep killing me. Sooner or later I will burn you to death with my own hands." Tuanzi watched the man in black on the recliner yelling curses, while the 2 black snakes tied to her body became tighter and tighter, pressing her body and limbs tightly together. Huge pain came, and she moved forward with her legs beating, gritting her teeth and saying, "When the time comes, I will burn you old monster to ashes, scatter your ashes in the East China Sea, West Blue, South Blue, North Blue, and cut you into pieces everywhere." IM on the recliner frowned and said with emotion, "What a sharp-tongued little girl, but you can only talk." He moved his index finger, and the black rope on Tuanzi separated into a black line, which was stuffed into Tuanzi's mouth. Tuanzi's eyes widened and she struggled. Even she couldn't hear what she was saying clearly. She could only make a whining sound, and she could feel a burning pain in every inch of her skin. She could only keep talking to divert her attention to other places. The next moment, the black ropes suddenly tightened, each one sinking into flesh and blood. Click. 2 crisp sounds were heard, her 2 forearms were broken instantly, blood oozed from her skin, her eyes were filled with red bloodshot eyes, she rolled her eyes, and with a plop, she fainted on the ground. Vegapunk bent down and picked up a few delivery pipes on the ground, walked slowly to Tuanzi, looked down at Tuanzi who was covered in blood, and said in surprise, "Advertisement, I have to admit that what this little girl said is indeed right. It seems that she will become stronger every time she is resurrected. The last time she was far from such a big momentum." who was lying down, still had a calm voice and said slowly, "More than that, haven't you noticed? The time for her to be resurrected is getting shorter and shorter. The first time she was resurrected, it took more than a month. The last time she was resurrected it only took less than 10 days. 9 days and 5 hours, Vegapunk added. I am calmly said, don't worry, even if this little girl is the reincarnation of a god, it is impossible for her to defeat me at this age. After I become a god, I will not let her die easily. I can't find a way to survive or die, there are so many ways. Vegapunk chuckled, yes. Then he lifted up the transparent delivery tube with great skill, and inserted the needle-pointed end into the top of Tuenzi's head. After 7 days, Holy Land Marijoya, Western Town. In a 5-story castle, there are all armored soldiers patrolling back and forth with long guns in hand. They look around with vigilance. Everyone looks extraordinary. Almost all the celestial dragons in the Holy Land live around the castle, and those celestial dragons from other directions have also moved here to live here temporarily. After experiencing that war, they counted and found that there were nearly 2,000 Tianlong people, but now there are less than 500 people alive. And these living Tianlong people now live in fear every day. They dare not go out and wander around for nothing, for fear that the murderous demon will suddenly appear next to him, chop off their heads with a sword, and then disappear in an instant. In the first few days, almost all Tianlong people were in a state of insomnia at night. In fact, these people don't know that even the 5 elders take turns sleeping. When the 4 of them rest, one person must stay vigil beside them. If this matter is known to other Tianlong people, I am afraid that those Tianlong people will not be able to sleep even more. The largest castle in the west is the home of the blonde 5 elders, and has now become the temporary world government. The construction work above Pangbu City is proceeding in an orderly manner, but it is definitely impossible to actually complete it and put it into use without 3 months of decoration and perfection. Advertisement especially this time, stronger materials were chosen for the building walls. 10 centimeters of steel were poured into the walls, greatly increasing their hardness. In addition, he also secretly ordered those devil fruit users who built the Grand Master to build secret rooms made of sea stone underground to prevent the last disaster from happening again. In the past few days, after seeing that the murderer in the middle did not come to kill again, these Tianlong people gradually relaxed their vigilance and slept peacefully at night. It's just that on the entire streets of Marijoya, except for the occasional appearance of Draco on the west side of the town, the streets in other directions are completely empty. At noon, the flames hung high. The sun is baking the ground, and the roses in the small roadside garden are wilting, their petals withered, and the hot light may dry out all the moisture inside at any time. The green grass next to it was still, there was no wind in the whole street, and it was extremely hot. After a while, a few celestial dragons walked out of the street and walked towards the castle head under the scorching sun slowly. More and more celestial dragons wearing white robes appeared. Waves of complaints filled the streets. In such a hot weather, they would never have taken to the streets if it hadn't been for the call of the 5 elders. It was simply hell for them. A Tianlong man wearing a fat white robe walked forward slowly. As his figure swayed, the silver jewelry on his body made a jingling sound, which was very pleasant. Like other celestial dragons, Sabushung's hair stood up and was curled at the end. He walked like a moving hill. His eyes were bright and restrained. He slowly turned his head and looked at Molten, who was walking with him. Saint asked, how come you, a person who claims to be a weakling, are walking alone now? I remember that there was a blue-eyed female pirate in your family with a delicate figure and a soft body. She was also very calm when riding hard. Why didn't you see her riding out today? Molten Saint, a thin man with sunken eyes, coughed and whispered. Brother Sabi, don't you know why? Who dares to ride a slave openly now? If the murderer hears about it, maybe he will wipe his neck that day. So, now we are all claiming to the outside world that all the slaves have been released, and we can just play at home. Anyway, in the more than 1,000 square meters of our own home, it is enough to play. Quote. Sabi Sheng sighed with emotion and nodded. Oh, who would have thought that we Tianlong people would be where we are today? It's really frustrating to be a slave and have to be sneaky. You do not say. Saint Molten shook his head and sighed heavily. Chapter 337 Noble Meeting. In the lobby on the first floor of the castle, the 5 elders gathered around the sofa, sitting casually but with serious expressions. There was a chill in the air. After recovering from this period of time, their faces finally had life, but they were still far from the state before the war. They all frowned and thought. There were already hundreds of celestial dragons standing around them, and there were still celestial dragons walking in one after another at the gate of the castle. Except for the faint footsteps of the celestial dragons, there was silence in the hall. These celestial dragons looked at each other, knowing that there was something important to inform them, but no one knew what it was. 10 minutes later, more than 300 Tianlong people were standing in the hall, and the spacious hall seemed quite crowded. The blonde old man slapped his thigh and said coldly, let's start talking. Those who didn't come won't wait for them. The bald old man leaning on the sofa and holding a sword nodded and said, let's get started. For those who missed it, let the others go back and communicate it to each other. For those who missed the important information, they will die for themselves and cannot blame others. Several other old people nodded. The blonde old man said, everyone, this is equivalent to an emergency meeting of nobles. The situation around the world is very bad now, and it has almost reached the point of urgency. What I want to talk about today may be related to the life and death of the future world government. If the world government ceases to exist, then your identity as a celestial dragon will also disappear. Since the Brandy Kingdom declared its independence, Fishman Island and Alabasta also announced their withdrawal from the world government. Only half a month has passed. Under the massive and all-out counterattack of the Revolutionary Army, nearly 20 countries around the world have been liberated. Moreover, as the war progresses, the strength of the Revolutionary Army not only does not decrease, but is like a snowball, getting bigger and bigger. If this continues, sooner or later, when the snowball reaches the Holy Land, no one will be able to stop it. Quote. Advertisement. The old man's calm voice echoed in the hall and fell in the ears of every Tianlong person. These Tianlong people were all stunned with their mouths wide open. They had fun and enjoyed themselves all day long in the Holy Land and paid very little attention to the affairs of the world. They only knew that a country had declared independence, but they did not expect that the situation was so serious. A middle-aged Tianlong asked cautiously, haven't the Revolutionary Army always existed? Why have they suddenly become more powerful during this period? Lord Five Elders, we must send troops quickly to eliminate them. Other Tianlong people also said. Yes, especially Long, the leader of the Revolutionary Army, is the most deceptive. As long as he is captured, the rest of the Revolutionary Army will be just a bunch of chickens and dogs, and they will definitely be vulnerable. Master Five Elders, don't we still have Kizaru Fleet Admiral? Why not let him lead the Marines to destroy these revolutionary armies? In addition, I heard that 2 Marine generals have been recruited. They should be very powerful, right? A Tianlong man behind this person slapped him on the head and said angrily, Sister Wang, you are too close to the news. During the last chaos, Kizaru declared independence, how could you still come to help? From what first see, Marine must be eliminated first, and Kizaru must be killed to regain control of Marine. Quote. Yes, we must regain control of Marine so that we don't have to worry about the Revolutionary Army. This suggestion was immediately echoed by other Tianlong people. After having this idea, the expressions on their faces became much more relaxed. For a moment, it seemed like there was a lot less tension in the air. Idiot! The blonde old man shouted angrily. He could no longer stand the brain deadness of these Tianlong people. It seemed that the privileges they usually enjoyed had turned them into a bunch of trash who didn't know what brains were. He said coldly. If Kizaru could kill him, the 5 of us would have killed him long ago. It would have been easier to deal with him if he was the only one, but now he is surrounded by 2 generals, Fujitora and Midori, who decided to obey his orders. The 5 of us could have fought against each other in our heyday, but now our physical condition is not as good as before. Quote. The bald old man holding the sword sighed and said, last time the 2 of us went to the Marine base in New World, we met Kizaru and the others halfway. The 3 of them had no intention of negotiating and launched an attack directly. Advertisement. That Fujitora directly attracted 3 extraterrestrial meteorites, which was extremely domineering. Considering the state of the 2 of us at that time, we were lucky to be able to come back alive. Quote. The blonde old man added. That Kizaru is so ambitious. He performed very well before. How can he rebel just because he rebelled? And judging from the power of his shot, he obviously hid his strength before. The surrounding Tianlong people were dumbfounded, and some smart people were already sweating coldly. They finally realized the seriousness of the matter. Don't we still have Lord I Am? If he is willing to take action, no matter how powerful the person opposite is, he will still be a chicken and a dog, right? Suddenly a middle-aged female Tianlong said excitedly, as if she had grabbed the life jacket before drowning. Other Tianlong people also agreed, discussed excitedly, and saw the light of hope again. The old man on crutches snorted coldly and angrily said, Idiot, if Lord I Am could have taken action, he would have taken action long ago. How could he wait until the current situation? His old man is indeed invincible in the world, but he is also completing a great transformation. After the transformation, Lord I Am will be the god of this world, omnipotent. But you have to know that before Master Yimu completes his transformation, nothing can interfere with him anymore. What we have to do now is to wait until the day when Master Yimu completes his transformation. Quote. The key is, how long will this take? When that day comes, will you still be alive? Can the world government still exist? The old man with white hair hanging down his waist added, Lord I Am is the original founder of world government. If after he comes out of seclusion, he sees that the world government he created has disappeared, I am afraid none of us can bear the consequences of Lord I Am. Anger. If it continues to develop in its current form, we can only persist for 1 year at most. When the Revolutionary Army liberates all countries around the world government will naturally cease to exist. Quote. There was silence, and all the Tianlong people fell into silence again, with all their faces as gloomy as water. They couldn't imagine that there was only 1 year left in this kind of enjoyment. After a year, who will let them have fun and who will serve them? An old family leader close to 5 elders asked in a deep voice. Since Lord 5 elders has called us all here, he must have some countermeasures, right? Now that the situation has become so serious, if there is anything we can do, just ask. Quote. The rest of the Tianlong people nodded like chickens pecking at rice. Chapter 338 Bait. The blonde old man stood up, looked straight at everyone, and said in a deep voice. Of course there are countermeasures, but we need all of you to cooperate and contribute all your slaves with fighting ability to form a special army. I know that each of you raises many slaves, and there is also a lack of fighting ability among these people. A powerful presence. At this critical moment of life and death, everyone must unite as one to tide over the difficulties together. Otherwise, the world government will collapse and you will all die. Quote. These Tianlong people were silent, and no one was the first to speak. After all, those slaves were considered their private property, and they were the basis for survival in the coming chaos. If they were handed over, they would really be at the mercy of others. The head of the house on the side sighed with emotion, his back bent, as if he had aged a lot in an instant. It turns out that the matter has become so serious. We Tianlong people have long been part of the world government and cannot be separated from each other. In this case, on behalf of the Angus Holy family, I agree to hand over all combat slaves. The blonde old man glanced at him appreciatively, and then looked at the other family heads who were mostly silent, hating that iron cannot make steel. What about you, Saint Bartholomew, Saint Miles, Saint Joseph? Why have you become mute one by one? Do you rely on those garbage slaves to protect you? You all think about it carefully. If Cheng Cheng suddenly appears next to you, are these slaves really useful? Quote. The old man with a bald head and a sword who seldom spoke had cold eyes and twinkling eyes. I hope you understand that we 5 old guys are not discussing with you, but informing you. Families that are unwilling to hand over their slaves will get out of the Holy Land today. Quote. These silent Tianlong people panicked instantly, and they were all at a loss. To let them leave the Holy Land at this time would be to let them die. The outside world didn't know how many people were waiting to kill them. Since the destruction of Pangu City, not only a handful of them had left Marijoa, but even their homes. I agree to hand over all slaves today. I agree. Advertisement. After one person takes the lead, others follow suit and all respond to the call. St. Miles asked cautiously. Master 5 elders, the female slaves who have no fighting ability in the family can stay. If I leave their service, my daily life will become a problem. The blonde old man's complexion improved a bit, and he said coldly, ordinary slaves, you can do whatever you want, and I will let you continue to enjoy it without any delay. But if I find out who dares to hide his secrets and hide slaves with fighting ability at home, I will not be polite, even my descendants will kill you. Saint Angus asked worriedly, Sir, even if we hand over all the slaves, there will only be more than 3,000 people at most. I'm afraid it won't be enough if we want to make a comeback. These people are distributed in various revolutionary army theaters, even less. The blonde old man continued, of course this move is not enough. As for the follow-up arrangements, you will naturally know them in the future. Go back and let the slaves gather at the door tomorrow morning. You have nothing to do here. Nearly 500 celestial dragons filed out, and after everyone left, the castle door slammed shut. The dazzling light from the outside world disappeared instantly, leaving only 2 light beams from the windows on the wall, illuminating the hall. The hall instantly became much emptier and quiet. The blonde old man waved his hand, and the maid serving tea standing aside quietly stepped back and left, her footsteps gentle and making no sound. Bang, bang. The old man with a cane in both hands tapped the ground gently, making a rhythmic sound that echoed throughout the hall. The B********** G suddenly stopped, and the old man sighed and asked, do you really want to cooperate with Big Mom Kaido? Once we cooperate with those 2 people, the reputation of world government will be completely ruined. What will other people in the world think of us? Haha, do you think our world government still has any reputation now? When did we ever care about this? The blonde old man retorted mercilessly. Besides, cooperating with the 2 of them is just a delaying tactic. We only need to wait until Lord Im comes out of seclusion to complete his transformation. By then, those 2 people can easily be crushed to death. Quote. The old man with a bald head and a sword pressed his back against the sofa and said with emotion, they are not stupid. If the bait is not big, they will not take the bait. Advertisement. The old man with white hair hanging down his waist said slowly, these 2 people are not short of money now, but they are short of reputation. During this period, they were suppressed by Cheng Cheng and the red hair, and they had no chance to shine. Moreover, what these pirates want most is nothing more than recognition from the world government. As long as we nod, they can immediately become 2 independent powers and break away from their pirate status. In addition, if we provide them with some devil fruits, I don't believe they will not be tempted. Quote. The blonde old man narrowed his eyes and said, there is also the Vinsmoke family, they are the most ambitious, and their strength should not be underestimated. As a scientific combat unit, Germa 66 mainly uses the technology called blood factor theory, which is called the realm close to the gods. The Patriarch Judge and his team used the blood factors of several outstanding soldiers to clone and transform the soldiers through research, making the soldiers become absolutely obedient and outstanding soldiers. Once their scientific troops are put into the battlefield, their combat capabilities cannot be ignored, and this person must be roped in. Quote. Everyone nodded secretly. The Vinsmoke family has dominated North Blue for many years and can be regarded as the largest force in North Blue. The old man with 2 sickle beards asked, what kind of reputation should I give them so that they will take the bait? The old man with white hair hanging down from his waist stood up slowly, his snow-white beard moved without any wind, his eyes shone brightly, and he said in a deep voice. Recognize the legal status of the 3 of them, canonize the 3 of them as the 3 holy emperors, and cancel the bounties on Big Mom and Kaido. Hasn't Vinsmoke Judge always wanted to dominate North Blue again? Provide him with financial support and let him destroy the first independent Brandy Kingdom first. Quote. The bald old man tapped the scabbard with his index finger and murmured, it's just that, I'm afraid they may not agree. The old man with long white hair chuckled and said, if they are still different, continue to raise the stakes, grant them the status of Tianlong, enjoy the privileges of Tianlong, and even be equal to the 5 of us. I don't believe they can resist taking the bait. The blonde old man asked in surprise, isn't this too much? Once we let him join us, I'm afraid it will be difficult to control him later. The long-haired old man chuckled. As long as we persist until Lord Im comes out of seclusion, nothing will go wrong by then. Chapter 339 Three Holy Emperors. 3 days later, a piece of news shocked the whole world. This shocking and explosive news shocked the whole world, whether it was pirates, revolutionary troops, marines, or ordinary people at the lowest level. There was a lot of discussion in the streets, alleys, taverns and shops, and this explosive news was discussed everywhere. World government issued an official document, canonizing Charlotte Linlin, one of the 4 emperors, Kaido of the Beasts, and Judge, the patriarch of the Vinsmoke family. The 3 of them became the 3 holy emperors, recognizing their status as a member country and enjoying recognition from the world government. At the same time, the bounties on Charlotte Linlin and Kaido, which totaled nearly 10 billion, were cancelled. In a large underground tavern in West Blue, countless people stayed up all night after learning the news, drinking to drown their sorrows. Tell me, what is this? The dignified world government actually recruited 4 emperors, and even exempted them from the bounty. Good guy, the 2 biggest pirate leaders in the world have suddenly transformed into became the 3 holy emperors. A middle-aged man dressed as a pirate raised his head and took a sip of wine. His cheeks were red, and he drank with great enthusiasm. The wine flowed down his neck. Not much actually got into his stomach. He cursed. The 4 emperors have all accepted the recruitment of the world government, so what is the meaning of survival for us little pirates? Are we just waiting to be canonized by the world government at the end of our efforts? Everyone around immediately yelled. FKU, Lousy's dream is not to be decreed by some world government, Lousy's dream is the ultimate secret treasure. Big secret treasure, ha 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 ha. After hearing this, everyone laughed, but there was a bit of sadness in their smiles. As pirates, almost everyone's dream is the great secret treasure that Roger talks about, but some people often talk about it, while some people bury their dreams deeply in their hearts. But no matter what, they will diligently water this dream every day, looking forward to one day in the future it will take root, become a towering tree, and grow abundant fruits. At the same time, people with self-awareness also understand that with their humble strength, even if the great secret treasure falls at their feet one day in the future, they will not have the ability to bend down and pick it up. Therefore, many times, the 4 emperors who stand at the top of the pirates have become the objects of everyone's longing. They are more real existences than the great secret treasure and can be seen and touched. Countless people firmly believe that the future One Piece must have arisen among these people. Invisibly, if you want to become One Piece and obtain the great secret treasure, you must first become 4 emperors. This unspoken rule is self-evident and deeply rooted in the hearts of the people. Advertisement. The 4 emperors are not only people they admire and fear, but also the belief of low-level pirates like them. But today, their faith collapsed. Some people's eyes became red while drinking. There was an old pirate sitting in the corner with gray hair and wrinkles on his face. He had been wandering on the sea for nearly 50 years. He gradually became a pirate from an ordinary fisherman. He only managed to survive after so many years. The bounty does not exceed 1 million Baileys, but he longs for a free life on the sea. When he was sailing on the long sea journey, he also passed by Roger, who had not yet become One Piece, and had a chance encounter. Only a few years later, he belatedly found out about the man who had asked him to borrow money. Young people who drink alcohol are One Piece. He stood up with his hands on his knees, his body swaying as if he was about to fall down at any moment. Boom. He suddenly smashed the wine bottle in his hand, and the glass fragments mixed with some remaining wine splashed, which immediately attracted the attention of everyone else. The tavern suddenly became calm, and the air seemed to freeze. Why is this old man so crazy? What happened to a good old man today? The old man's old eyes scanned the crowd and shouted in a deep voice, "What are you doing? Aren't it just the 4 emperors from Jowan? Why are you so sad?" Since Big Mom and Kaido gave up their identity as pirates, it means that they have never produced a real pirate from beginning to end. They are not qualified. Don't forget, there is also the extremely powerful Black Justice pirates in 4 emperors. The red-haired pirates, they dared to set foot on the Holy Land and massacre the celestial dragons. This is the pirate worthy of our admiration. The future One Piece will definitely be born between these 2 people. Everyone suddenly realized, yes, then they are not qualified to be called pirates since they have rebelled. Among the 4 emperors, there are also the strongest Cheng Cheng and Hongfa. With them, the pirates' faith will not collapse. Quote. The glasses clashed, and these pirates cheered up again, filling the tavern with a joyful atmosphere. The old man was happy tonight. He accidentally drank too much and fell drunk on the street just after walking out of the pub in the middle of the night. The day after Kaido and the others were canonized as the 3 holy emperors. Advertisement. Charlotte Linlin personally led her sons and hundreds of thousands of troops to prepare for the Daughters Island, which is the grand shipping route. Today's Daughters Island has become the territory of the Black Justice pirates. One of the conditions for her to become the 3 holy emperors was to destroy Daughters Island and kill Cheng Cheng's limelight. Kaido sent more than half of his troops, 300 people with artificial animal devil fruit abilities, and 18,000 pirate troops to fight against the revolutionary army of the Grand Line. At the same time, he also personally went to Wano country to prepare to kill the Kurozumi snake. Taking advantage of the situation, he incorporated the Wano army Ut Banjong, which was originally affiliated with Orochi, and brought the 5,000-person ninja army and the 5,000-person samurai army of the Wamihui group under his command. After the Vinsmoke family was recognized by the world government, not only did they confer the status of the three holy emperors to the Patriarch Judge, they also conferred the title of Celestial Dragon on all their clan members. The five elders secretly promised Judge that as long as Lord Im comes out of seclusion and establishes the kingdom of God in the future, there will be a quota for the Vinsmoke family. After the repair of the Holy Land is completed, the Vinsmoke family can move to the Holy Land. Vinsmoke Judge sent 1,000 scientific combat troops to use advanced equipment to help the Holy Land of Mary Joa rebuild its buildings. At the same time, he personally led troops that day, leading dozens of warships, giant snails and cat carts that could sail and cross the Red Continent, a total of 80,000 fully armed scientific troops. The Revolutionary Army is preparing to clean up the entire North Blue Theater at the same time, as well as the Brandy Kingdom, which was the first world government to declare independence and is now hated by the world government. The whole world is mighty and turbulent, as if everything was moving on this day. The gear that drives history forward speeds up its rotation. New World, Marine Headquarters. The white marine flag on the roof flutters in the wind and makes a hunting sound. The logo on the flag is a seagull holding a scale in its mouth, symbolizing the maintenance of world peace and order. While the outside world is in chaos, Marine, who is usually the busiest, lives a very peaceful life, as if the ups and downs in the outside world have nothing to do with this place, and this is the only pure land on the sea. Ever since Kizaru Fleet Admiral announced that Marine was independent and would no longer obey the world government's orders, an important decision was made that day. All Marines have a 1-month holiday with pay, and their wages are doubled. Chapter 340 King of Volume. In the Marine Headquarters Square, a dozen or so Marines were holding standard sabers and slashing at each other. Over the shooting range in the corner, the sound of gun training could be heard from time to time. They have all been on paid leave for a month. They eat and sleep all day long and eat after sleeping. They are so bored that they are almost driven crazy by this leisurely life. They can only find things to train themselves one by one. If this continues, they might forget how to hold a gun. Of course, these hardworking people are in the minority after all, and most people still really like this kind of life of lying down. Just lying down, they found that the outside world had undergone earth-shaking changes, and they were worried that if they continued to lie down like this, the world government would disappear. Fortunately, what makes these two groups of people with different mentality happy is that the holiday is over in 2 days and they can finally return to normal life. There were more than a dozen fishing enthusiasts sitting on the wooden boards on the shore of the pier. For them, fishing time passed quickly and they enjoyed such a carefree life. The honest-looking James is a young soldier wearing black-rimmed glasses, with a tall build and dark skin. He seems to be full of strength, but his favorite sport is fishing, which is not in line with his body type. The cool sea breeze blows across the sea, causing ripples in the water and flashing with golden light under the sunlight. If you keep staring at the sea, you will still feel a little dazzling. But he still likes to look at the sea, so he recently considered whether to upgrade his glasses to add a sun protection function. Considering that he didn't have much money in his pocket, he could only sigh in his heart and wait until his salary was paid. He was sitting on a small bench. From a distance, you couldn't even see the stool under his butt. It seemed like he was sitting in the air. He looked at Kebi, who was fishing aside, and said with emotion, "I really hope this kind of life can last forever, so that I can fish every day." Kirby's eyes with pink hair were full of expectation. "We are Marines, how can we become stronger if we are always so decadent? There are countless pirates in the outside world, all waiting for us to kill. I will go crazy if I rest any longer." Quote. Advertisement. James looked at Kebi strangely and said, "The intensity of your daily practice is simply like a devil. You will never give up until you tire yourself out every day. I just see you as pitiful, so I forcefully dragged you here to fish for a day. The holiday will end the day after tomorrow, so there is nothing wrong with giving yourself a day off. If you stretch that nerve every day, you won't be afraid of breaking it." Quote. Kebi looked at the fishing rod in his hand, his palms suddenly clenched tightly, and he gritted his teeth and said, "It's not enough. I have to become stronger. What I have done is far from enough." James said, "That's enough. Your daily training intensity is almost as good as Cheng Cheng's back then." Kebi suddenly blushed. "How can I be compared with that 5 emperors? There is a huge difference." James ignored his friend's unreasonable shyness and said slowly, "Up to now, haven't you seen the situation clearly? Are you still thinking about killing pirates? The world government has canonized the 2 most powerful pirates, Big Mom and Kaido. The crimes they had committed before were easily eliminated with just a word from the world government. Don't you think that all the efforts that we Marine have made before? Is it a joke? I admit that there are good people among pirates, but not many, just like Mr. Luffy." When talking about Luffy, Kebi's voice was very low, for fear that others around him would hear the name. But most pirates commit crimes by burning, killing, looting, and the crimes they commit must be punished by someone. James chuckled. He knew that his friend admired Luffy. He raised his head and looked at the water at the beach and said slowly, "Of course pirates who do bad things must be punished, and the punishment must be severe, but many people don't understand this and naively think that as long as they are pirates, they are bad. As long as it's marine, it's good, as long as it's called chili, it's spicy, and as long as it looks human, it's human. Sometimes we have to admit that most people are ordinary people and they do not have the ability to distinguish right from wrong. So our future opponents are not pirates, but those who commit crimes. Quote. Kirby patted the thick muscles on his friend's arm and praised, James, you can't tell. It's amazing that you can say such wise words with such a simple and honest face. James smiled and said, what does it mean to be honest and honest? What do I mean by hiding my clumsiness? How can I be wise and stupid? It means we have a good relationship. If it were anyone else, I wouldn't bother to waste my words. Kebby shook his head and sighed. It's a pity that I have such a bare body, but I don't like to fight and kill, so I just became a receiver. It's a waste. Advertisement. A chosen person has already appeared in this world. If I just join in the fun, having that person there is enough. James said with emotion. Kebby sighed. Yes, with the 5th Emperor Cheng Cheng here, no one can surpass him. I used to think that the person who would change the world would be Mr. Luffy, but I didn't expect that Mr. Luffy's brother would be even more powerful. The man who once changed the world was Luffy. James then thought for a moment and added, no, if you really count carefully, that person should be you. Kirby rolled his eyes and thought it was a friend who gave him encouragement. He was very grateful to this friend. If he hadn't been forcibly dragged to the New World to perform a mission before the war, he would have died in Marineland. Although the former Marine Fleet Admiral Sengoku was also a good person, he was too pedantic and did not know how to adapt. With the suppression of Tianlong and the 5 elders, even if he wanted to reform, he would encounter great resistance and seemed powerless. It's not as good as our current Kizaru Fleet Admiral, who has ideas, courage, and his own justice, which is Marine's blessing. Quote. James chuckled and continued fishing wholeheartedly. Kirby patted his butt and stood up, put the fishing rod on the stand, and said, I can't rest anymore. I will start working the day after tomorrow. I must stay in the best condition. James shook his head and smiled, saying nothing. People who chase their dreams, no matter how embarrassed they are, deserve respect from everyone. At this time, a loud voice suddenly sounded from the loudspeaker in the square, resounding throughout the entire Marine headquarters. Everyone was familiar with this voice, because it was Marine Fleet Admiral Kizaru. Nothing happened recently. The paid holiday will be extended for 1 week. After the lazy and brief voice, everyone had different expressions. Some people cheered, long live Kizaru Fleet Admiral, ran and jumped into the sea with excitement. The Marines who were looking forward to catching the pirates sighed heavily and lay down on the spot with expressions of despair. Kebby, who had just walked out of the dock a few steps away, stiffened as if struck by lightning. He took a deep breath and immediately made up his mind, gritting his teeth and saying, you rest while I practice. When the time comes, the position of General Marine will definitely be mine. No one can take it from me. Chapter 341 I am for justice. The top floor of Marine headquarters. Kizaru Fleet Admiral, dressed in a yellow striped suit, was lying under a parasol, wearing sunglasses, and holding a glass of secret drink in his hand. It was cold and delicious. After a sip, he immediately felt cool all over his body. Behind him, there were 2 beautiful women, Marine, waving their fans gently, blowing up the breeze. Kizaru was lying lazily on the bamboo recliner, with his legs stretched out at will. A small blue book was suspended above his head. Every once in a while, golden light would appear on the page, and it would automatically turn to the next page with the breeze. It's a good time in the world if you don't have anything to worry about. Kizaru let out a long sigh, and sure enough, after possessing strong power, freedom will be at your fingertips. Now he sits in the Marine headquarters and commands all the Marines in the world, with a total of nearly 1 million troops. He also has fierce men like Fujitora and Green Bull as vanguard generals. There is also the support of the mysterious boy in the secret. The world is so big, who dares to provoke him? To sum up his current state, there is only one word. Stable. As for Yi Mu, he didn't take it seriously at all. He could just leave it to that kid Cheng Cheng. Even if that kid died in the end, with his speed of light, he would probably find a small country where no one knew him and live in seclusion. It is still very stable. Cheng Cheng had told him before that after independence, he should not do anything extra, just focus on stability, get more pay and vacations, and have fewer meetings and training, so that the morale of the military and the people would naturally improve. It can be said that Kizaru has implemented Cheng Cheng's policy to the extreme. Behind them, 2 female Marines wearing hip-hugging skirts, with proud figures, covered their mouths and smiled sweetly. Fleet Admiral is very talented in literature. Kizaru said helplessly. Don't flatter me. We can't let this kind of trend prevail in Marine. It's an unhealthy trend. The long-legged woman on the left behind her had a rosy face and said pitifully, we want others to flatter us, but no one has flattered us yet. Come over. Kizaru looked serious and asked the 2 female Marines to come forward. The faces of the 2 female Marines suddenly became more and more rosy. They walked up to Kizaru with long legs and begged, Master Fleet Admiral, can you be gentle this time? Advertisement. Snap. Kizaru stretched out his hand and quickly scratched the 2 people's buttocks. The force was not heavy, but the sound was very loud, and the 2 crisp sounds echoed in the air. The bodies of the 2 girl soldiers instantly trembled and they almost collapsed. At this time, the phone placed next to the table suddenly rang. The 2 female Marines kept silent at the same time with a tacit understanding, stood up quietly and returned to Kizaru's back. Kizaru frowned slightly and quickly picked up the phone. This phone number was a separate contact information he left for Cheng Cheng. No one else knew this number except Cheng Cheng. Every time the phone rang, he knew that life was coming. Moxie Moshi, is this Kizaru Fleet Admiral? I am Brandy King Iwatobi. The voice that came over the phone was a middle-aged man's voice. It was strong, and a little reserved, but it was definitely not Cheng Cheng's voice. What's going on? Why did this guy give his contact information to other people? Kizaru's eyes were cold and he asked patiently, how did you know this phone number? The 5th Emperor Cheng Cheng gave it to me. He said that when I encountered the crisis of destroying the country, I would contact Fleet Admiral. He said that Fleet Admiral Kizaru has the world in mind and will definitely not leave us alone. Kizaru sighed. His tone was indeed like that boy's, and the Brandy Kingdom is now the territory of the Black Justice Pirates, so what the king said is almost believable. He originally saw the news in the newspaper. The 3 newly consecrated holy emperors launched attacks at the same time, which almost stirred up the situation in the entire sea. The Vinsmoke family's Germa 66 Legion attacked Brandy in a large scale, Charlotte Linlin led the army to attack Daughter Island, and Kaido of the Beasts led his Devil Fruit army to snipe the revolutionary army. Originally, he wanted to ignore the news, but as long as Cheng Cheng didn't speak, he would not move. But now that the calls for help have come in, it's up to him. Oh, it's the king. Don't worry, since Germa 66 does not abide by the peace agreement between countries, it invades small countries wantonly and initiates war. As a messenger of justice, first, Marine, will never sit idly by and ignore this. Quote. Thank you Lord Fleet Admiral, thank you Lord Fleet Admiral. With Marine's help, our Brandy can be saved. Iwatobi said. Advertisement. After hanging up the phone, Kizaru sighed, the vacation is over. Then he picked up the microphone on the table next to him, took a deep breath, turned on the microphone switch, and ordered in a deep voice. All Marines, assemble immediately. The lazy but powerful voice spread throughout every corner of the headquarters, like rolling thunder. The Marines who were fishing by the pier threw their fishing rods, the Marines who were lying on the ground basking in the sun, competing with each other, sleeping at home, and swimming at the beach, all Marines ran quickly to the square. The dense crowds from all directions moved and gathered towards the square. From time to time, white figures running quickly flashed through the crowd. They were generals in the Marine Corps. They were all wearing white justice coats and stood at the front of the crowd. The momentum was magnificent, and everyone exuded a powerful aura. They stood in a line, like an indestructible city wall. Then 2 more impressive figures, one purple and one green, fell down, standing proudly in front of the generals with their backs to the crowd, their momentum like a rainbow, like 2 unshakable mountains, standing unshakably between heaven and earth. Seeing that everyone was almost gathered in the square, Kizaru tiptoed and turned into golden light particles that swept into the sky. Then the sacred yellow light flew through the air and arrived on the high platform in front of everyone in an instant. The high platform is 6 meters above the ground. There are 3 calm and solemn chairs on it, inlaid with exquisite golden patterns. They are majestic, like a throne that controls all power in the world. Kizaru walked slowly, facing everyone and sat on a larger chair in the middle, with his legs crossed, lazily and leisurely. He looked at his 2 confidants and said softly. Sit down. Fujitora and Green Bull were not polite. They tapped their toes at the same time, flew to the high platform, and sat down on the left and right respectively. The blind Fujitora put his sword by his side, his hands flat on his knees, and his face remained calm, like a Buddha. Green Bull imitated Kizaru's sitting posture, crossed his legs, and said with a smile, Fleet Admiral, you have a new life. There was silence in the square, no one made a sound. Kizaru nodded lightly, very satisfied with the effect, and said lazily and hoarsely, I believe you should have seen the news that the Vinsmoke family had just been canonized as the 3 holy emperors, and they led the army to maliciously invade the Brandy Kingdom. What is the meaning of Marine's existence? It is nothing more than to protect the weak and maintain world peace. Faced with such an extremely egregious invasion and war to destroy the country, I, Kizaru, will never allow such a thing to happen. Everyone, are you willing to work with me to safeguard justice in the world? After a brief silence, a roar echoed in the square, which shook the whole world. Chapter 342 The Changing Situation. Sabayati Islands. The sunlight shines through the dense branches and leaves on the tender grass, forming streaks of yellow light in the air, with tiny dust particles floating in the light, giving people a very peaceful feeling. Countless transparent bubbles emerge from the ground and rise slowly. When light passes through, the surface becomes more colorful and madara-like, like a dream. When these bubbles reached their peak, they exploded one after another, making bursts of slight noises, which were very pleasant to the ear. Mercury splashed everywhere, and layers of fine water mist fell down. Invisibly, the sound of exploding bubbles interweaves into the rhythm of nature, adding a touch of vitality to the quiet and peaceful sky. After the last war, this place has undergone months of recovery and reconstruction. There are many high-rise buildings everywhere, prospering, and it has regained its vitality and glowed with new vitality. After the last time everyone from the Black Justice Pirates slaughtered the Celestial Dragons here, the Celestial Dragons have never been seen here again, and this place has even become a forbidden place in the hearts of the Celestial Dragons. In addition, after the battle in the Holy Land, the Tianlong people suffered heavy casualties, and they even cowered in the Holy Land and did not dare to come out. The occurrence of this situation was impossible in everyone's past perception. Children were laughing and playing on the street, and adults no longer had to worry about accidentally bumping into a celestial dragon. Girls dressed in youthful and beautiful clothes walked to the street, talking and laughing without restraint. It's all peaceful and peaceful today. All because of the existence of one person, that is Cheng Cheng, the 5th Emperor of the Black Justice Pirates, a sea emperor who rose up in the old world. There are many indigenous people here who voluntarily posted a reward order for the 5th Emperor Cheng Cheng on the living room wall of their home, and they bowed and worshipped every morning. These people at the lowest level simply hope that good people like this can have better luck and live longer. It would be better if there were more pirates like this. This place is still a paradise for pirates. All pirates who aspire to go to the New World will come here to coat their ships, and then pass through the Red Earth continent through the seabed hole and enter the New World. Those pirates who are self-aware and think that they are weak regard this place as the end of their journey, just to meet other big pirates here. Island No. 49. The Wanli Sunshine is docked on the coast not far away. The ship is surrounded by a layer of transparent bubbles. Under the sunlight, it shines brightly and emits colorful Madara light. Luffy and his group stood on the shore and looked at the ship that had been successfully coated for half a month. They all looked happy. After the coating was completed, they could enter the New World. Advertisement. New World, here I come. Luffy shouted excitedly, jumped up high, was the first to pass through the bubble, and landed gently on the deck of the Wanli Sunshine. Zoro and Sanji followed closely behind and fell onto the deck one after another, all of them looking excited. Sanji wore a yellow wig on his head, which was custom made by a seller on the island. However, it was still a little loose on his head. When he fell from a height, he had to press the top of his head with his hands to prevent the wig from falling off. He now had an astonishing aura, standing there gave people a very domineering feeling. He looked at the crowd and said in a deep voice. We have to speed up, we can't delay it any longer. Nami nodded and said. Yes, we must stop Big Mom before she sets off, and we must not let them invade Daughter's Island. Robin said. Auntie will launch an attack after holding this large-scale tea ceremony, so we must rush to Cake Island within 10 days. While they were talking, the Wanli Sunshine slowly dived and entered the seabed. The bubbles isolated all the surrounding seawater from the periphery, and fish of different shapes were floating around. As the diving speed became faster and faster, there was less and less sunlight around them, and darkness slowly swallowed them up in the cold water. Zeus stayed in the corner without speaking, his expression solemn, his body trembling, and he hesitated for a long time before he said. Nami, do we really want to fight against Auntie? You don't know that she is a monster. That powerful power is not something that humans can possess. Brother Cheng Cheng can suppress him. Isn't it too much for us to just let it go? I was so excited. And when we get there, I don't dare to resist her orders. Once we lose, I may be imprisoned by my aunt. Quote. Nami touched Zeus gently and said with a smile, it's okay. When you get to New World, you can go find somersault clouds and play. I won't let you be in trouble. We are very strong now. Brother Cheng Cheng's whereabouts are unknown. I haven't contacted him for a long time. The headquarters of the Black Justice Pirates is on Daughter's Island. We must not ignore Big Mom. Robin said softly. Besides, even if we don't go find her, Auntie won't let us go. If Zeus joins us, Auntie will already hold her grudge. Boom. Luffy collided with his fists, making a roar and vibrating the air. He looked at the increasingly darker sea water around him and said. I want to be the man of One Piece, so what about the 4 emperors? I will beat him away just the same. Advertisement. Zoro and the others all smiled with relief. Even without Cheng Cheng, they would inevitably fight the other 4 emperors on their way to becoming One Piece. Only by defeating the lofty 4 emperors and reaching the top can their captain be qualified to be called One Piece. The Wanli Sunshine broke through the water and quickly rushed into the depths of the sea. There was darkness, as black as ink, like a giant hand with its mouth open, waiting for them to commit suicide. The news that Marine went to support the Brandy Kingdom swept the world like a storm. People from countless countries have praised Marine, saying that Marine is the one who truly upholds justice for them. Germa 66 led the scientific troops to attack Brandy, which was undoubtedly an aggressive war of bullying, just when all countries were gloating and preparing to watch the joke. No one expected that Marine, who was independent of the world government, would stand up and claim to protect weak countries and uphold justice. Kizaru even made bold words, not just today's Brandy, but when any weak country is subject to a war of aggression, justice will appear. Those small countries around the world suddenly felt a great sense of security. For a time, Marine branches all over the world received flowers sent voluntarily by ordinary people. Those Marines who lost their faith also rediscovered the meaning of being Marines in the future today. Uphold justice, protect the weak, and live up to the justice you carry behind you. There are also some people who are sarcastic and swear that Marine is just pretending. They will definitely not really take action. At most, they will go around after the war, make a show, and then condemn the Vinsmoke family in the name of justice. Many people agree with this statement. After all, the image Marine gave them before was indeed not very good. Somewhere in the New World, more than 20 warships formed a triangle and rode the wind and waves, creating white waves on the sea. The sea breeze is surging, the waves are rolling, and every warship is like a giant sea beast, powerful and domineering. On a separate battleship at the front, Admiral Green Bull and Fujitora stood side by side, looking calmly at the sea. The breath is calm and majestic like a mountain. Chapter 343 The Returned Brothers. Brandy Kingdom, Eastern Sea. The setting sun emitted pink light, reflecting the surrounding clouds in a variety of colors. The sea surface reflected the red clouds and the red sun in the sky, and the blood-colored brilliance fluctuated like a sea of blood. Dozens of warships were lined up in the east, and everyone was silent and waiting. The war is coming, and a chilling atmosphere hangs over everyone. Every soldier looked serious, and they were all prepared to die. Some even received their pensions in advance and sent them to their homes in person to say goodbye to their families. It's not that they don't trust the king, it's just that they want to hand the money into the hands of their lover personally. The Vinsmoke family has been dominant in North Blue for many years. Their scientific troops are well equipped with a variety of advanced weapons, and their soldiers are all genetically modified. They are not afraid of death on the battlefield and absolutely obey orders. Almost every soldier is a killing machine without emotion. Years ago, the Vinsmoke family ruled the North Blue. In this sea, no country can resist them. All the soldiers knew that it was impossible to defeat the Vinsmoke family with hundreds of thousands of them. There was only one thing they had to do, and that was to delay. Drag the supporting Marines to come, drag the Black Justice Pirates to come, and they will win. You know, Brandy now belongs to the territory of the Black Justice Pirates. Everyone in the world knows it, and the people of the Black Justice Pirates will never sit idly by. What they didn't expect was that this time Marine would take the initiative to help them in the name of justice, which immediately made them, who had not thought highly of Marine in the past, feel a little moved in their hearts. Western waters. Compared to the place in the Eastern Sea area that is about to become a battlefield, this place is more quiet and peaceful. There were old men fishing in 2s and 3s at the pier, and children of 5 or 6 years old were running and making noises. There were bursts of laughter. A little girl with twin tails suddenly fell down and rolled on the ground crying. The chattering mothers and daughters around them ignored the children's fuss, with a hint of sadness in their brows, and looked eastward from time to time. Although I couldn't see anything from 100 miles away, I just couldn't control myself. There was a red light on the sea in the distance, and the setting sun seemed to be falling into the sea. A small wooden boat sailed over, drifting, and 2 black figures could be vaguely seen on the boat. The small wooden boat was pulled back. There were 2 people, one with a square face and the other with a round face. They both had a big knife on their waists. They skillfully docked the boat at the dock and jumped into the shore. Advertisement. The veteran on duty on the shore knew the 2 children and said with a smile, "Why are you brothers back again? Aren't you clamoring to join the Dark Justice Pirates? You couldn't be lost at sea." Thomas was carrying a cloth bag, and the food in it was almost enough for them to eat. He said, "We have seen the news on the sea, and the scientific force of the Vinsmoke family is coming soon. If our brothers leave at this time, wouldn't that mean they are deserters?" Henry's cheeks were sharp and he walked forward quickly, urging, "Brother, we have to hurry up and set off overnight." The veteran smiled happily. Although these 2 brothers were young, their strength should not be underestimated. They should not be treated as ordinary 14-year-old or 15-year-old children. He said slowly. "There is also a carriage in my yard. You can use it. It will help you travel faster. You should be able to reach the East Coast early tomorrow morning. Little Henry, Thomas, you brothers will all be the pillars of Brandy in the future, don't die too early." Quote. Thomas smiled and said, "Knowing Grandpa Shaw, we will not die so easily. We will also join the Black Justice Pirates." After all, Henry had an impatient personality. He ran 100 meters away and rushed in the direction of the veteran's home. He waved with his back to the 2 of them and shouted, "I know." Then the 2 of them didn't go home at all, and headed east towards the battlefield. At the entrance of the palace hall, on a tall step, it was clean and spotless. The setting sun sank into the earth, the sky was dark, and a crescent moon had just risen. King Iwatobi, dressed in a yellow robe and wearing a crown, sat on the steps of the square. When he was a prince, he wanted to sit here and look up at the stars. He felt that this could broaden his horizons and allow his thoughts to spread out along with the vast starry sky. When he encountered something he couldn't understand, he would often sit here alone for a while and then solve it. At this time, he needed to understand a question: why did Marine, or Kizaru, come to help them? Is it a real gang or a fake gang? What's Kizaru's plan? Where is the deep logic hidden behind it? Any war will inevitably involve interests, but what are the interests of Kizaru sending troops this time? If it was just for the sake of justice and the righteousness of heaven and earth, he wouldn't believe it even to death. Why would he have gone there so long ago? Advertisement. According to his understanding, Kizaru is not a person who can uphold justice, and he firmly believes in his own judgment. After Marine became independent from the world government, the financial support from the world government must have been cut off, and it must be short of money now. Could it be that he has taken a fancy to this piece of fat from the Vinsmoke family? However, compared to other pirates, the Vinsmoke family is a tough nut to eat. For a time, countless thoughts flashed through the king's mind. The guards in the square are all 100 meters away. They must ensure the king's safety while not appearing in the king's sight. However, at this time, there was an unusually tall man beside the king. Bartholomew the Big Bear, he sat down 3 meters away from the king, like a hill. He was a burly king among ordinary people, but he looked like a dwarf at this moment. King Iwatobi looked at the man in front of him who looked like a hill. He had a strong aura. Even if he didn't know how to fight, he could still feel that the man in front of him was powerful and majestic, like a standing Vajra. "Mr. Big Bear, I may have to sit here for a little longer tonight. If you don't want me, please go back first. It's so late and there shouldn't be any assassins." Bartholomew the Big Bear also imitated the king and looked up at the stars, and said in a gentle voice, "It doesn't matter, His Majesty the king doesn't need to worry about me." The king smiled bitterly in his heart. He did not expect that Big Bear, who looked so scary and had the title of tyrant, could speak so gently. When the other party said this, he stopped being pretentious. In fact, logically speaking, Marine was the first to be independent from the world government, and the time of independence basically coincided with the time of the Holy Land War. Moreover, Cheng Cheng also gave him the contact information of other Kizaru. He did not expect that after getting through, Kizaru Fleet Admiral agreed immediately without saying a word. What is the relationship between Kizaru and the five emperors Cheng Cheng? Nowadays, Brandy is known to be the territory of the Black Justice Pirates, but why did Kizaru not mention this in the news at all? Does this mean that justice must be maintained? Such an evasive statement can deceive ordinary people, and any truly smart person can see the fishiness in it. Suddenly, he connected everything together and thought of the most impossible answer. He stood up, took a deep breath, his eyes were shining brightly, and he murmured. The five emperors, Cheng Cheng, are truly a man who knows everything about heaven and earth. Chapter 344 The Five Emperors in Desolation. South Blue, Apple Kingdom. It is a sparsely populated area with a pleasant climate. It is planted with large apple trees and is famous for exporting apples. Among them, the four-season spring apples are world-renowned for their sweetness and juiciness. In the early morning, the sky was dark, and the light rain fell on the ground, making a peaceful sound. Cheng Cheng was in tatters, carrying a broken Junhai sword on his back and a red wine gourd on his waist, walking barefoot on the rain-covered grass. His pants were shabby and worn, with several holes in his knees and calves, and black silk threads were tangled out. The black suit on his upper body had been lost to someone unknown, and he was only wearing a white shirt underneath. The shirt became dirty and gray-white, and the cuff on his right shoulder was torn, as if it had been torn apart by the claws of some kind of monster. The rain wet his gray hair and trickled down the ends. His face was expressionless and his eyes were dull. This doesn't look like one of the famous four emperors. He is a beggar, and he is also the worst among beggars. Swish. The light rain all over the sky rang in his ears. Stepping on the cold grass, the rain mixed with the rain made his heart feel more peaceful. As he walked like a log, his eyes slowly became clearer. In the next few days after leaving the bun shop, he would teleport there to eat some buns every time he was hungry. Later, in order to save time, he gradually stopped going. During this month, he didn't know how many system tasks he had completed and how many rewards he had received. He has not slept for more than a month. Sometimes he feels like he is sleepwalking. Sometimes his brain temporarily loses contact with the outside world. After completing a task, he can only hear the cold reward sound of the system. The process of completing the task, but I can't remember it. There are also many rewards, including higher purity Saiyan blood, Zangetsu, Getsuga Tensho, Kuro Ryugato, Senbon Sakura Kagin, Freedom of Intention Kung Fu, God of Fire Kagura, Breath of Thunder, Breath of Insects, Nine Heavens Red Sun Gourd, Seven Flashes, Street. George's Sanctuary. After he easily learned these abilities and equipment, he placed them deep in his mind. Although these abilities are very strong, they are still not enough to support him in defeating IM. The only Nine Heavens Chiong Gourd that he finds useful is used by him to hold wine. He drinks some when he feels thirsty. The Nine Heavens Red Sun Gourd contains the true fire of Samadhi. It can emit fire all over the sky with just a thought. Moreover, this flame cannot be extinguished with ordinary water. It can only be allowed to burn. When it burns out all objects, nothing can be done. Dependence will naturally dissipate between heaven and earth. Advertisement. But now it is hung casually around the waist and used as a gourd to hold wine. His strength is tyrannical, much stronger than during the Holy Land War. He is confident that if he faced the five elders now, he would easily defeat the five of them. The Great Holy Grail is placed under the Phantom Beast Spirit Tree. The water of life overflowing from it will flow directly to the root of the tree and be absorbed by the Phantom Beast Spirit Tree. Today's Fantasy Beast Spirit Tree is so huge, nearly tens of meters high, that one has to stretch his arms to hug the trunk. The tail of the thick and dense tree roots is inserted into the void, slowly absorbing mysterious energy. Golden flowing filaments generally swim in the middle of the tree roots. Hundreds of golden threads gather and concentrate in the middle of the trunk. There was a faint golden light all around, the golden branches and leaves fluttered gently, making a slight sound, and dots of golden light sprinkled down the ground, like snowflakes falling. The faint golden light exudes the most holy and bright atmosphere. The mountains stand tall and motionless in the void, giving people a feeling of holiness and tranquility. Whenever Cheng Cheng was delirious, he would stare at the Phantom Beast Spirit Tree for a while, and he would immediately feel calm and clear. The trees were covered with devil fruits. At a rough glance, there were nearly hundreds of them, but none of them were what Cheng Cheng wanted. They were not strong enough. The mission to come to the Apple Kingdom this time is to find a building called the Apple House. The system only gave him a rough range, so he could only search haphazardly. There were 3 or 5 people walking slowly in front, each carrying farm tools such as hoes and shovels. They were talking and laughing. They must be nearby fruit farmers. As he got closer, he saw 2 middle-aged people, a woman, and a young man about his age. The young man was carrying a basket covered with a layer of white cotton. When they saw Cheng Cheng approaching, they couldn't help showing a look of disgust in their eyes, and stayed away, for fear of getting too close to Cheng Cheng. Cheng Cheng was not angry when he saw the people in front of him deliberately avoiding him. He was dressed like a beggar now, so it was difficult for people to like him. However, although he was dirty, there was no unpleasant smell. Now that he has a strong body, his skin is as smooth as jade, free of dust and dirt, and exudes natural body fragrance, he has long since left his mortal body. He stopped 3 meters in front of the crowd and asked, "Just asking, do you know if there is a place called Apple House nearby?" Everyone took a step back to distance themselves from Cheng Cheng. The woman held her nose and took 3 steps back with a look of disgust on her face. Advertisement. A middle-aged man looked sarcastic and said, "Apple House. In our Apple King, whose family doesn't have an apple house? The room where apples are kept is called Apple House." Everyone also laughed, and then walked around Cheng Cheng and walked forward. Cheng Cheng was stunned. It seemed to make sense. He thought about it carefully and then asked the people's backs, "Is there a building that looks like an apple, or something else?" However, the few people who walked 5 or 6 meters away just said casually, "No." The obese woman who was behind everyone spat into the rain, pinched her nose, and was about to rush past Cheng Cheng. She stopped after just 2 steps and looked at Cheng Cheng with wide eyes. Cheng Cheng was dragging a palm-sized gold brick in his hand. It was golden and very heavy. He weighed the gold brick shaking in his hand and said, "How about you think about it again? This place is very important to me." Ouch. The obese woman slapped her thigh suddenly, her fat trembling, and said sharply, "Little brother, please wait a moment and let me think about it." When the men in front heard the woman's voice, they stopped, turned their heads and looked in confusion, opened their mouths to urge the woman, but before they could make a sound, they saw the golden bricks in Cheng Cheng's hands, and they all trotted away. "Come over." The woman scratched her head and thought for a long time, but she still didn't expect such a place. She said to the other people, "You guys should think about it quickly and think carefully. If you find a place, this big gold brick will be ours. Look at how big this gold brick is. We may not be able to earn so much even if we work hard for a year." Quote. Everyone else was lost in thought for a while, scratching their heads and heads. There are a lot of apples in their apple kingdom, and every household has an apple house, but they have never seen a building that looks like an apple. After a while, the woman said with a grimace, "How about I make one for you?" Cheng Cheng knew there was no hope, so he put away the gold bricks and walked forward. Since they didn't know the location, there was no need to waste time here. The obese woman suddenly became anxious and wanted to reach out to grab Cheng Cheng, but was stopped by the man beside her. The man's eyes were cold, he made a silencing gesture and whispered, "This person is definitely a fat sheep. Go to the mountain and ask your elder brother to come out. You will definitely get a lot of harvest. Also, ask your elder brother to bring more brothers. This person is steady with a sword on his back. He should be a tough one." Chapter 345 Apple Tree on Apple Mountain. Cheng Cheng, 100 meters away, was walking barefoot on the grass. His small voice was clearly audible in Cheng Cheng's ears, as if he was talking to him. Now with his hearing, if he listened carefully, he could clearly hear the heartbeats of other people 1,000 meters away, the sound of water droplets falling to the ground, and even the sound of snowflakes falling to the ground. If he didn't want to hear the words, he would close himself off. No matter how the waves rolled and the thunder burst in the outside world, in his ears it was calm and peaceful, silent and quiet. He didn't comment on this and didn't bother to pay attention to it. If those people came to die, he wouldn't mind sending them away personally. The drizzle of light rain gradually became denser, the rain speed accelerated, and the air became a bit colder. There were not many pedestrians on the road on a rainy day. Cheng Cheng then asked several villagers, but none of them had heard of similar buildings. A few people in the middle handed Cheng Cheng some big pink apples, which had just been picked and were very fresh. Cheng Cheng ordered 2, 1 in each hand, mixed with the rain, and ate them in big gulps. The sky is gloomy and filled with mist. Even if you fly into the sky on this rainy day, your vision will be greatly affected. Why don't we wait until the rain stops before we look for it, and find a place to sleep first? I haven't slept for more than a month. He thought to himself, then looked around, trying to find a place where he wouldn't be disturbed. The black mountains in the distance are rolling, like giant beasts entrenched on the earth, falling into a deep sleep for millions of years. There is a small hill nearby, and the mountains and plains are covered with apple trees. It looks fiery red from here, like the gorgeous fire clouds under the sunset, and it is full of life. The dense rain roared past his ears, falling to the ground with a shower of rain sounds. The world is so big that all the messy noises are eliminated, leaving only the sound of rain, which makes people feel peaceful and seems to forget all the troubles in the outside world. Just go there. Cheng Cheng tiptoed, and the rainwater on the ground exploded, flying into the apple mountain not far away. The rain hit him, forming a layer of light mist. His figure flew through the air, like a sword, cutting through the rain. Within a few breaths, we were at the top of the mountain. The top of the mountain was a flat ground, as if it had been flattened by a giant sword. Cheng Cheng was not surprised at all. Before the battle on the top, he could achieve this level with one sword with all his strength. Advertisement. There is a circle of apples planted around them, all with lush branches and leaves, but there are not many apples on the trees. It seems that they have been picked. He casually went to lie down on a thick apple tree, inserted the Junhai sword into the ground, and fell into a daze. Soon, sleepiness came to the top of his head, and his eyelids became extremely heavy. In a daze, he seemed to faintly hear the sound of Tuanzi, which was lively and sweet, like wind chimes swaying in the valley. Master, my swordsmanship has become more and more powerful recently. Am I just a little short of reaching the legendary peak? Master, I will definitely cut out a sword energy during my sword practice today to show you clearly and let you know that I am not lying. Why is the rain getting heavier and heavier today? Master, I have no strength. Can you eat an apple first and then start practicing the sword? The little girl's voice became clearer and closer. Master, why don't you practice sword practice today? It's raining too much. Cheng Cheng, who was lying on the tree, woke up suddenly. He opened his eyes, sat up straight and looked straight ahead. The little girl's voice was not an auditory hallucination. It was not far ahead. He was breathing rapidly, knowing that it was impossible. It's a dumpling, but fortunately, there is an inexplicable expectation in my heart. I heard a calm and old voice again. How many times have I told you, Master? Swordsmen like us should have perseverance, abstain from greed, abstain from anger, abstain from oral desire, and abstain from having fun. The only thing we must stick to is the word, crazy. Only when 1 inch of your heart is infatuated with the sword can you achieve great success in the art of swordsmanship. How can you reach the top in the future if you just want to be lazy every once in a while? After finishing his words, Cheng Cheng saw 2 people, an old man and a young man, walking up to the top of the mountain in front of him. The old man is dressed in gray clothes. He has an ordinary figure and a steady pace. He has a long breath and gray hair. His whole body has a restrained aura, as if he is hiding a sword in a box. He is not an ordinary person. The little girl was petite, wearing a loose red training uniform, the same color as the red apples around her. She held a sword in both hands and used it as a walking stick to support the ground, breathing heavily. Walking on a rainy day is the most difficult, and going up the mountain is even more difficult. The little girl has short yellow hair and a small red flower on her head. Her skin is white and tender, her facial features are delicate, and her pupils are azure, like the heart of the ocean. Panting heavily, her cheeks were red, she sat down on the ground and muttered. Master, you are so infatuated with swords that you are almost buried in the soil. You are still an old bachelor and you don't even have a wife. What's the use? You evil disciple, why did I accept such a rebellious thing like you? Advertisement. The old man pulled the little girl up and asked her to stand up obediently. The mountain climbing just now was just a warm-up activity. You haven't practiced sword practice yet. Cheng Cheng looked away and sighed in his heart. It seems, but unfortunately not. The little girl's name was Klein. She also found Cheng Cheng lying on the apple tree. Hey, I didn't expect there would be anyone else here. Klein was slightly surprised, then showed surprise, and walked over to greet Cheng Cheng with a smile. She could feel that although the origin of the person in the tree was unknown, his eyes were full of kindness when looking at her, and he showed care from the elders to the younger ones. Klein, come back. Before she had even taken 2 steps, the old man caught her back, lifted her up with one hand and put her behind her back. The old man's eyes were gleaming, extremely sharp, and the sword energy around him was fierce, and the sound of metal buzzing could be faintly heard. He stared at Cheng Cheng. He didn't know if it was an illusion. At that moment, he felt a shocking momentum, like an ancient ferocious beast dormant in front. Once he stepped in front, he would invade his territory and would be instantly swallowed up by the raging flames. However, this feeling disappeared in a flash, and even he was not sure whether it was an illusion. Klein had never seen his master look like this, so he stopped playing around and looked at Cheng Cheng warily. Cheng Cheng apologized. I'm just sleeping here for a while. I didn't know this is where you practice swordsmanship. Don't worry, I'll leave now. With that said, he jumped down from the apple tree, pulled out the Junhai sword inserted into the ground, turned around and walked slowly down the mountain. Klein watched him leave, walking alone in the rain. His only sword was broken, and his clothes were in tatters. He felt inexplicably that this man was too lonely. I don't know where the courage arose, and I walked around to the old man and asked loudly. Brother, are you also a swordsman? Cheng Cheng trembled, stopped in the rain, turned around and said with a smile, of course, this is my sword. After saying that, Cheng Cheng swung the Junhai sword a few times, and the rain hit the broadsword body, causing water mist to splash everywhere. Klein's eyes suddenly lit up and he walked over excitedly. Brother, your sword is so big. This is the first time I have seen such a big sword. Can you let me have a look? Chapter 346 Klein. The old man originally wanted to stop the apprentice, but he thought that the way this person was about to leave just now didn't look fake, he shouldn't be a bad person, and he was confident enough in his own strength. After a slight hesitation, he let the girl pass, but he was still very vigilant. Klein ran over with a smile, extremely happy, his eyes turned into crescent moons, very sweet. Hold it firmly, this sword of Junhai is not light. Cheng Cheng reminded and handed the hilt to the little girl. What a domineering name, Junhaijian. It's so domineering. Even though Klein was mentally prepared, after taking the Junhai sword, her expression changed. She touched the fracture with her white palm and said. But it's a pity. Why is it broken? It must be more handsome when it is intact, right? Cheng Cheng smiled and nodded. Seeing that Cheng Cheng made no other movements, the old man gradually felt relieved and went to feel Cheng Cheng's aura carefully, but he still found that the other person was like an ordinary person and could not feel any powerful aura. Klein wielded the Junhai sword, and the sword roared with overwhelming momentum, cutting off the dense rain forcefully. Cheng Cheng was surprised that the little girl was only 11 or 12 years old, but she was actually a talented swordsman. Klein said excitedly, Brother, since we are both swordsmen, why don't we spar? Don't worry, we'll stop here and I won't hurt you. You are one of the few people who dare to challenge me. Cheng Cheng chuckled. After the little girl's fuss, he wasn't so sleepy anymore. He took the Junhai sword and said, I'll leave first if I have something else to do. We are destined to meet again after a long journey. Klein quickly ran to Cheng Cheng, looking pitiful, and begged, Brother, please, I have been practicing swordsmanship for so many years, and apart from fighting Ergo in the village, I have never competed with other swordsmen. You can do it. Just promise me. Cheng Cheng looked helpless. He had too many skills at his disposal now, and he might not be able to control any of the powers. He might hurt the little girl if he wasn't careful. The old man's old and steady voice, even in the heavy rain, was extremely penetrating, saying, Little brothers, there is no need to worry too much, we are destined to meet each other, why not give some tips to the bad guys? Advertisement. I am a scoundrel who relies on some talent on his own, but is usually too lazy to practice swordsmanship. It takes an outsider to let her know what it means to be someone outside the world, and there is a heaven outside the world. Quote. Cheng Cheng said, Your apprentice's talent in swordsmanship can be said to be extraordinary. His affinity for swordsmanship is second only to that of my apprentice. Within 10 years, he will definitely have a place among the great swordsmen in the world. Oh, the old man's expression changed and he took a few steps forward. He knew about Klein's talent in swordsmanship. It would not be an exaggeration to say that it was unprecedented. What he just said was just modest and polite, but he didn't expect that this talent looked less than 20. The young man is so arrogant. The old man who had always been calm and indifferent suddenly felt a sense of comparison. He looked at his apprentice and said with a smile. Klein, didn't you say you learned how to strike with sword energy? Let this little brother give you some pointers. He looked at Cheng Cheng with a smile. This sword energy slashing attack was the product of a certain level of sword energy, speed, and strength, all of which were indispensable. Some low-level swordsmen cannot comprehend this realm throughout their lives, and whether they can strike with sword energy is the dividing line in judging a swordsman's strength. Cheng Cheng hesitated for a while and said, That's okay, then I'll take a look. When Klein saw Cheng Cheng speaking in an understatement, he thought it was because he didn't believe her, so he became serious for a rare moment. Clang! The azure blue sword in his hand suddenly came out of its sheath and let out a sword cry. Crane bent his knees and lifted the sword upside down. The sword was engraved with delicate patterns, like rolling waves, and the sword buzzed. The sound of the sword seemed to echo with the sudden rain between heaven and earth, blending into one. She suppressed the blush on her immature face, gave a soft drink, and ran forward. Stop the water! With a soft shout, Klein's footsteps stepped heavily on the rain as he ran, splashing water, and a blue light glowed on the sword. The long sword was lifted up, and azure light quickly poured out from the tip of the sword, forming a crescent of sword energy and flying into the rain in the distance. The blue crescent sword energy instantly separated the dense rain curtain, leaving a blue stream of light in the sky. Wherever it passed, the rain seemed to have stopped flowing, and it was powerful. That's right, that's right. The sword energy is so strong that it deserves to be majestic. Advertisement. The old man smiled and nodded repeatedly, looked at Cheng Cheng and said, Little brother, what do you think? Cheng Cheng nodded and said, It is indeed extremely difficult to achieve this level at this age. Seeing the old man's smiling eyes, he sighed in his heart, knowing that it would be impossible if he didn't come up with something real. Besides, he really liked this little girl. The moment he was about to fall asleep, he really thought it was Tuanzi talking. Old man, you are right. Meeting is fate. Little girl, I see that you are very close to water, so I will teach you a set of water-breathing techniques. Cheng Cheng looked at Klein. If my guess is correct, this is probably the reason why your master has to take you up the mountain to practice swordsmanship on rainy days. Klein looked at his master in confusion. The old man nodded with a smile, and looked at Cheng Cheng with something strange. Little brother, you are right. You are indeed a master of swordsmanship. There are only a handful of people in this world who can see these things at a glance. Little girl, watch carefully. After Cheng Cheng finished speaking, he took a deep breath. Water vapor filled his body instantly, and the rainwater from the entire mountaintop was gathering around him, forming a huge waterspout above his head. In the hazy blue water, Cheng Cheng exuded a powerful aura that covered the world. At this moment, he seemed to be the spiritual master of water, commanding all water sources in the world. The whirlpool above the head is getting bigger and bigger, rising straight from the top of the mountain into the sky, like a water column reaching the sky. It is so powerful that the roaring sound is louder than the showers all over the sky. It resounds throughout the sky and the earth, shocking people's hearts. Klein stared blankly at the waterspout, which she couldn't see to the end. She didn't know how powerful it was, but she just thought it was beautiful and spectacular. The old man narrowed his eyes and looked at Cheng Cheng seriously. This person who can have such power at will is definitely not a nobody. Cheng Cheng was dressed in rags, almost like a beggar, but if you look closely, you can see that his skin is white and tender, with a faint jade glow. After ignoring the dirt on his face, his facial features are even more handsome. He also has a broken sword Junhai sword in his hand. At this time, his momentum is overwhelming, like the god of war descending. He cannot be a beggar at all. Junhai sword, Junhai sword. The old man recited the name of the sword a few words, and the more he thought about it, the more familiar it became. Seeing Cheng Cheng's gray hair gradually being washed away by the rain and turning into a pure white, he suddenly widened his eyes and took a deep breath. It's you, Garp's grandson. Chapter 347 The God Axe Gang. The waterspout that spread all over the sky dissipated and turned into curtains of water falling down, and it rained heavily in an instant. It seemed that Cheng Cheng's waterspout caused even greater rain in the sky. The originally dense raindrops became heavier and poured down. The loud sound of rain overwhelmed all other sounds. Sword domain space. The old man shook the ground with one foot, causing rainwater to splash. The index and middle fingers of his right hand came together to form sword fingers, and they quickly passed through the air in front, forming a, well, and crisp sword sounds sounded. Waves of invisible ripples quickly spread outward, forming a circular light barrier that enveloped the entire mountaintop. The entire mountaintop instantly became quiet, and the heavy rain from the outside fell on the light curtain, as if it had encountered transparent glass and flowed down the light curtain. Cheng Cheng was a little surprised. There were not many swordsmen who could do this easily. Even Eagle Eye might not be able to do it as easily as this old man. As expected, there are still hidden masters in this world. Cheng Cheng couldn't help but sigh in his heart. He was not surprised that the old man recognized him. After all, in today's world, it is difficult to find someone who doesn't know him. Before, it was just him dressed like this, and others didn't think in that direction at all. Klein was obviously used to the transparent spaces created by the old man, so he didn't show much surprise. However, after hearing the old man's words, he looked at Cheng Cheng with wide eyes and hurriedly took out a reward warrant from his pocket. Quickly opening the neatly stacked reward order, Klein carefully compared it with the image of the blonde hair on it, and kept getting closer to Cheng Cheng. When he was 1 meter in front of Cheng Cheng, he suddenly screamed. "Ah, master, he is really the 5 emperors." The old man said. To have such a powerful power at this age, who else could it be if it wasn't him? You keep saying that Cheng Cheng is your idol, but today I stand in front of you and you don't recognize him anymore. Lord 5 Emperors, I finally see a living person. Klein yelled and suddenly stepped forward to hug Cheng Cheng. Cheng Cheng felt helpless. He was too famous, and he had troubles as expected. He said, "You should have seen clearly what I taught you just now." Klein nodded heavily. I remember it very clearly." The old man frowned and asked, "You are so majestic, how did you become like this?" Advertisement. Cheng Cheng said, "It's hard to say anything. Old gentleman, just think of this as a practice. I have something else to do, indeed something urgent, so I'll leave first." As Cheng Cheng turned around and left, Klein wanted to say something, but he opened his mouth and didn't know how to speak to keep him. Cheng Cheng walked slowly to the edge of the top of the mountain, with 1 foot in the air outside and 1 foot on the edge of the cliff. He suddenly turned around and asked, "By the way, is there a house that looks like an apple around here? Or a place called an apple house?" The old man thought for a long time, but couldn't think of any clues. He just shook his head gently. Klein looked strange and said softly, "Lord 5 Emperors, where is the place you are looking for?" "It should be nearby. I don't know the exact location," Cheng Cheng said. Klein suddenly bared his teeth and grinned, his eyes curved into 2 crescents, very sweet and cute, and said, "There is a building that looks like an apple here, but I don't know if it is the one you are talking about." "Where is it? Take me to see it." Cheng Cheng's heart moved and he said hurriedly, whether it was true or not, he would know it when he saw it. It would be easier than being a headless fly now. Klein blushed slightly and said, "There is a high chance that it is not what you are looking for, Lord 5 Emperors, but it is very close, on the mountainside, and will be there soon. I won't waste your time, Lord." Cheng Cheng felt a little funny in his heart. How could the carefree little girl when they first met become introverted when he saw that he was so scary? He smiled and nodded in agreement. Klein led the way. The 3 of them braved the heavy rain and walked down the mountainside. After walking out of the curtain set by the old man, the sound of heavy rain suddenly sounded outside, and the world became noisy again. However, the rain was not an obstacle to the 3 of them. In addition, the old man intended to use the heavy rain to temper Klein's sword power, so Cheng Cheng did not do anything extra. Otherwise, with his current strength, if he wants to stop the rain, he can just separate the dark clouds with a sword. At the foot of the mountain, more than 100 people wearing quar raincoats were lurking in the apple trees. All of them were holding weapons and guns, and exuded a gangster spirit. Some of them were the people Cheng Cheng asked about the location. The man at the front was tall and burly, without a raincoat to protect him from the rain. He had a bright red scar running diagonally across his face. He looked extremely ferocious and exuded a domineering aura. There was a black battle axe stuck in front of him, and he was holding a telescope in his hand to look at the top of the mountain. Advertisement. His nickname is Kaishan God Axe, and he is the leader of the God Axe gang. In the beginning, there were many hills in the Apple Kingdom. There were more than a dozen hills, big and small. There were bandits on almost every apple mountain. Later, the God Axe gang swept all the hills and completed the unification of the bandit world. Because of the big black axe in his hand, even the Apple King was polite when he saw him. Previously, someone under his command said that a suspicious foreigner had a lot of money, so he casually took out a gold brick and asked for directions. Without saying a word, he immediately rushed over with some elite gang members. However, when he arrived, the brother who was originally following the man accidentally lost his target. Just when everyone was about to give up and go back, they noticed some strange movements in these mountains. When they took a look with a telescope, they saw a vague black figure, which looked very much like their big fat sheep. A brother next to him said, "Boss, the rain is getting heavier and heavier. If it drags on, I don't know when it will stop. How about we just go up?" I don't think that old man Edward will meddle in other people's business. No, this is old Edward's territory. There are so many of us who can't rush forward at any cost. We would rather let this fat sheep run away than take this risk. The mountain god Axe held up the telescope with one hand and said in a deep voice. Being the boss doesn't just require muscles, it also requires brains. There are particularities to who can be offended, who should be respected, and who should be licked well. Why can the Axe gang continue to exist in Apple Country? In addition to the impressive force of these people, every time pirates invaded from other places, wasn't he the first to lead his brothers to fight against them? Otherwise, no matter how strong these people are, they will never be able to fight against the power of a country. As for old man Edward, that was someone he didn't want to mess with even to death. The others said nothing and obeyed the boss's arrangements. Wait, they seem to be going down the mountain. Someone from the side warned. Kaishin Axe immediately raised his telescope and stared at it. Through the heavy rain, he vaguely saw three black figures descending the mountain. He chuckled and said. Let's lie in wait here. When the fat sheep comes down the mountain later, we'll go up together. If we don't go up the mountain, even old Edward can't stop our financial path. Chapter 348A Index of Magical Forbidden Books. Cheng Cheng followed the girl all the way down the mountain. The way down the mountain was a staircase made of stones. The rainwater flowed down the mountain along the stone stairs, like a waterfall. Fortunately, the three of them all walked calmly. If they were ordinary people, they might be washed away by the current accidentally. The heavy rain was pouring, and the sound of rain rang in his ears. Cheng Cheng felt peaceful and calm, and he could calmly appreciate the surrounding heavy rain and the apple trees all over the mountain. The little girl jumped up and led the way. She didn't hold an umbrella but didn't seem to be afraid of the heavy rain at all. She was like a cheerful little fish, swimming freely in the water. Through the heavy rain, you can faintly see a dark hole in the middle of the mountain ahead. Lord Five Emperors, we will be here soon, right in front. After Klein finished speaking, he quickened his pace and ran over quickly. Cheng Cheng, on the other hand, disappeared in a flash and appeared at the edge of the cave entrance in front of him the next moment. The old man following behind took steps calmly, but there was a distance of 3 to 5 meters with each step, and he soon followed. The opening of the cave located on the mountainside is not large, just enough for 2 people to pass through normally. There is a bulge sloping outward above the opening, which just blocks the rain from the outside world. The rainwater flowed down the mountain, forming a small water curtain hole at the entrance of the cave. There was only splashing water on the ground near the entrance, but it was very dry inside. While Cheng Cheng was secretly admiring the magic of nature, he looked inside the cave entrance. It turned out to be a large cave, with a space of nearly 30 square meters. There were some hoes, iron picks, hemp ropes and the like piled in the corner. Farm tools. There are also large and small woven bamboo baskets around. These things should be tools used for picking apples. However, after Cheng Cheng glanced around, his eyes fell on the spherical stone in the middle. Klein ran to the spherical stone terrarium and said with a smile, Look, Lord Five Emperors, this is the apple house I made. Isn't it pretty? Cheng Cheng stepped forward and took a closer look, and found that this was a hut made of stones, a little more than 1 meter high, with large and small gravel blocks stuck together with soil, and it looked like an apple. The old man followed and walked in, saying, You stinky girl, I usually let you come to the mountain to practice swordsmanship, but it would be better for you to sneak up on me and get something like this for me. He said, When I asked you to practice swordsmanship, did you come here to be lazy? Quote. Advertisement. Klein made a face at his master, walked around behind Cheng Cheng, and said, Is there anything good about practicing swordplay all the time? Shouldn't you rest when you are tired from swordplay? Practice when you want to practice, and play when you don't want to practice. Only in this way will I be happy. Master, you always tell me honestly and follow nature, isn't that how it should be? The old man sighed and was unable to refute, and apologized to Cheng Cheng. My lazy apprentice makes you laugh, but when she concentrates on practicing her sword, she is really attentive. All the changes in the outside world have nothing to do with him. She is right. Following nature is the right way. Sometimes forcing things won't work. Cheng Cheng walked slowly to the apple with a sad look on his face. If he had not wanted to encourage others at that time and had only allowed Tuanzi to practice swordsmanship without giving her the devil fruit, Tuanzi probably would not have been captured later. He wished he had been the one who ate the first devil fruit. But what has really happened and cannot be changed. Tuanzi, waiting for master. He put his hand on a stone in the apple house, moving slowly. The stone was as cold as touching an ice cube. Congratulations, uncle, for completing the apple house sign in task. Close black lens bracket. Reward. A catalog of magical forbidden books. Close black lens bracket. Suddenly, a mysterious low chant came from the entire cave. The voice seemed to come from the ancient mysterious heaven. It was unclear what the words were in the chant. Cheng Cheng only felt that it was obscure and mysterious, and full of energy. In the sky above the apple house, colorful brilliance suddenly appeared, shining with crystal clear brilliance. The inside is like a crystal, shining in the void, with colorful brilliance like jade. The soft light illuminates the dim cave, and the entire cave space is filled with colorful light. So beautiful, so beautiful. Klein's eyes reflected the colorful brilliance and he said obsessively. The sound of magic chanting from distant time and space gradually became louder, and it seemed that it had penetrated countless parallel spaces and cosmic barriers before the sound was conveyed here. Advertisement. The sacred chanting has a loud voice, as if God is gently telling the secrets of the universe. For a moment, the sound of the rainstorm outside the cave disappeared, the world was silent, and the three people could hear only the mysterious chanting of magic. I don't know how long it took, but the mysterious magic chanting suddenly stopped. Cheng Cheng and the three of them opened their eyes at the same time like an old monk in trance, escaping from the indescribable state. Wow, it was raining heavily outside the cave, and only then did the three of them notice the sound of the rainstorm again. It turns out, I'm still here. Klein's eyes were a little confused, as if he was waking up from a big dream. The old man's bright eyes were reflecting on the colorful brilliance suspended in the air, and his sword energy was like wind, rising to a higher level, gently lingering around him. The colorful brilliance gradually dimmed. It was a thick magic book, the size of which was no different from an ordinary book, but it was nearly half a meter. Cheng Cheng was dumbfounded. If this book had been given to him when he was at school, he would have been frightened to death right away after just one look. Stepping forward, he pulled down the catalog of magical forbidden books. After a closer look, he found that the cover of the book was made of red wood, and the fine lines on the wooden board could be clearly seen. The four corners of the cover are wrapped in cowhide to prevent them from being bumped. There is a six-pointed star array in the center, exuding a faint yellow starlight, flickering erratically, like the heart of this magic book, beating regularly. Cheng Cheng had a headache. The previous skills were directly transferred to his mind. There was no need for him to analyze and understand through reading. He might not be able to learn such a thick book even if he studied for 800 years. Opening a page of the magic book at random, Cheng Cheng was instantly dumbfounded. It was filled with dense English and some ancient symbols that were difficult to understand. Some resemble a star array, some resemble some kind of animal, and some are a series of complex and complicated gestures. He turned to the cover of the first page to see if there was any brief introduction. Then after seeing it, there was very little English on the first page, only 2 short rows of letters. However, he held it in for a long time and still couldn't find it. I recognized a few poor words. All, thank you. System, how can I read this book as a reward? I can't read it without knowing the words. Uncle, I have mastered 12 trillion languages and characters in all time and space in the world, and I can transmit language information to you at any time. Close black lens bracket. Chapter 349 Zangetsu Knife. After Cheng Cheng chose English without hesitation, a lot of information instantly appeared in his mind. His eyes flashed with a faint golden light, and he looked at the cover with confidence, and he could immediately understand the English meanings. This book combines 103,000 magic books, and all the magic that exists in the world is recorded in it. May the Lord of Magic protect you, thank you. Cheng Cheng sighed and placed the magic book heavily on the ground with a dull sound. Klein took a step back in fright, looked at the half-meter-high book warily, and asked in a trembling voice, Lord Five Emperors, what kind of book is this? It's too thick. This is a magic book, but you can also think of it as a library. The magic in it is as vast as smoke. Once you learn it, you will be invincible. Cheng Cheng looked at the girl's frightened expression and was a little amused. Knowing that she was probably also a scumbag, he deliberately pushed the half-meter-high magic book towards the girl's position and said with a smile. I don't have time to learn these magics anyway, otherwise I would give you this book. Ah, no. Klein screamed and backed away quickly, her back pressed against the cave wall. She looked at the book as if looking at a savage beast. She hurriedly explained. I have been obsessed with sword wielding and drunkenly in love with swords all my life. There is nothing else in my heart. I only need to practice swordsmanship. The old man deliberately reminded his silly apprentice that this was a huge opportunity that he had missed. He could feel that as long as the apprentice nodded just now, the magical book of magic would definitely be hers. But if he helped his apprentice make a decision, he might even anger Cheng Cheng, so he could only say nothing and sighed in his heart, but he still couldn't help but asked. What is magic? Is it also a move similar to martial arts? Cheng Cheng smiled and shook his head, saying, It's different, old man, you can understand the power of being able to possess devil fruit abilities without eating devil fruits. In short, this is a power that should not exist in this world. The old man nodded silently and stopped talking. Cheng Cheng sat down on the magic book, looked at the frightened little girl, and said, You helped me complete the task. Since you don't want this magic book, then I will give you something else, which can be regarded as a reward for you. Advertisement. No, this apple house is where I usually sleep. I won't help you with anything. No reward is needed. I can see you with my own eyes. I'm very happy today. Klein waved his hand urgently and said, Clang. A white light flashed in Cheng Cheng's hand, and he inserted the Zangetsu sword with a white bandage around the tail into the ground. A strip of cloth appeared from the bandage on the hilt, hanging in the air. This is the Zangetsu sword, given to you. The Zangetsu sword is stuck diagonally on the ground, and the sword body is shaking, shining with sharp sword light. The sword body is cold as water, and exudes an extremely strange aura. If you listen carefully, you can seem to hear the screams of hundreds of ghosts, as if you were in purgatory. Except torture. What a domineering knife, I like it. Klein's eyes suddenly lit up, and he ran forward, but before he could hold the handle of the knife, he was stopped by the old man, who said in a deep voice, This is a demon knife. With your current strength, it is still difficult to control it. Klein moved his body forward with one foot in the air, almost touching the handle of the knife with one hand, and said hurriedly, "It's okay, I'm not afraid, this is a knife given by Lord Five Emperors, it looks so majestic when taken out." Quote. Ever since Cheng Cheng received the Zangetsu sword as a reward, he has been keeping it in the ring space to collect dust, and he took it out for the first time today. After seeing it, he was also surprised by the evil aura on the knife. If the little girl wore this knife for a long time, it would indeed affect her mind. It doesn't matter, this knife has another form. Cheng Cheng made a sword with 2 fingers, golden light flickered on his fingertips, and with a flick of his wrist, a golden trail was left in the air, like a small golden snake. Then he wrote a swastika symbol in the air, moving slowly. After he finished drawing, the golden symbol shone brightly, exuding sacred light. With a push of his palm, the golden symbol hit the Zangetsu sword at an extremely fast speed. Bankai. With a soft drink, the blade of the Zangetsu sword made a buzzing sound, and for a moment the golden light was so dazzling that it made people unable to look straight at it. The entire cave was filled with splendor. After the golden light dissipated, the old man stared at the Zangetsu knife that slowly emerged with wide eyes. The original knife disappeared and turned into an extremely wide, kitchen knife. The old man was a little confused. He had only heard that people with devil fruit abilities could transform, but he had never heard of weapons that could transform. Advertisement. The width of the huge kitchen knife is not inferior to that of the Junhai sword. The blade gradually becomes sharper from the handle. From the appearance point of view, it is an enlarged version of the kitchen knife. On the blade, the sound that originally sounded like an evil ghost crying and roaring disappeared, and turned into a pure domineering aura, like a battle-hardened general, commanding the battlefield, invincible, and there is nothing in the world that it can't cut. With such a domineering sword, most people would probably be overwhelmed by the domineering power emanating from the blade after wielding it for a while, exhausting their physical strength. But compared with the previous soaring demonic energy, it no longer affects the mind of the knife holder and has no side effects. What a domineering sword! Klein grasped the handle of the knife with both hands, and raised the tip of the knife upward in his hand. The Zangetsu blade continued to tremble, making bursts of thunderous sounds, as if he was unwilling to be held by such a little girl with low strength. Klein was immediately furious. He held knives in both hands and exuded heavy sword energy. He gritted his teeth and said, "Don't move around. Be obedient." Suddenly, Zangetsu Dao became as quiet as a docile cat. Cheng Cheng secretly felt surprised when he saw this. If this girl meets Tuanzi in the future, the two of them should have something in common. After that, Cheng Cheng taught the little girl a move called Sanban Sakura Jingyan. Although the little girl didn't learn it yet, she was very happy. Her eyes like 2 crescents never stopped. Cheng Cheng glanced at the heavy rain outside the cave and knew that it couldn't stop in a short time, and he didn't have time to waste it here, so he said to the two of them. "I really have to leave next, and I have to go somewhere else, Klein. Maybe I will bring my apprentice to you later." Klein grinned widely. "That's great, then I will take him to pick the best apples in the world." Cheng Cheng nodded slightly, then stepped out of the cave. Etc. The old man suddenly called out to Cheng Cheng and said, "My apprentice has been following me all day on Apple Mountain and cannot go anywhere. I have taught him almost everything I have learned in my life. Can you take her with you? Let's go and accept her as an apprentice." Cheng Cheng was just about to refuse. Tuanzi hadn't been rescued yet. How could he have such thoughts now? Then he heard Klein cry and said with red eyes, "Master, you don't want me anymore. You said before that I would support you until you die. I have promised you, if I don't bury you in the ground with my own hands and watch you die with my own eyes, I will never go anywhere else." Quote. Chapter 350 Sneak Attack. The old man couldn't laugh or cry, he was angry and funny at the same time. He wanted to reach out and teach this rebellious villain, but he still couldn't bear to put his hand down after holding it in the air for a long time. At the same time, the old man was more pleased that it was possible for the 5th Emperor Cheng Cheng to become his master and apprentice. This was definitely a great opportunity. It was very rare that his stupid apprentice could not forget to bid him farewell at this time. Then Cheng Cheng gently raised his arm, and the half-meter thick index of magical forbidden books slowly floated behind him. He said goodbye to the two of them and walked straight out of the cave. Cheng Cheng stood in the rain, and the air around him surged upward from the soles of his feet, forming a transparent barrier above his head, as if a transparent glass cover covered both him and the magic book behind him. The rain splashed along the transparent barrier, but not a drop of water could fall on Cheng Cheng. It seemed that the heavy rain outside was not in the same space as him, and the rain all over the sky could only form a transparent rain curtain around him. The old man and Klein took Cheng Cheng to the entrance of the cave and watched as the strange man and beast slowly disappeared. "Master, why do I feel that Master Five Emperors is so lonely and unhappy?" Klein carried the big kitchen knife Zangetsu, looked at Cheng Cheng's distant figure outside the cave and said, "He is obviously so strong, why is he unhappy? Why is this?" The old man sighed. "Girl, the world is like this. Whether you are happy or not has something to do with your strength, but it doesn't matter much. The greater the ability, the greater the responsibility and the greater the pressure. Just like you, if you lose your swordsmanship now, would you be happy? Of course not. This is the result of several years of hard work." Then Klein thought about it carefully and said, "But I'll be fine in a few days. After all, there are apples all over the mountains and plains here, clear skies, fresh air, and master, you are with me, what else should I do? So happy." The old man laughed after hearing this. Cheng Cheng didn't go down the mountain very fast, with a steady pace, and no longer cared about anything outside. System, help me search to see if there is any magic that I can practice automatically. This magic catalog is so thick, how can I have time to learn it bit by bit? Sir, I'm helping you check. Advertisement. Auto-assisted practice magic has been found, the 9384th magic belonging to the magic catalog. Close black lens bracket. Is there really such a magic? I didn't expect it to happen just by asking casually. Then I can make it learn automatically. Uncle, the index of magic contains all kinds of magic in the 3000 worlds. It has everything you want. Only you can't imagine it. There is no magic that does not exist. Close black lens bracket. Cheng Cheng thought about it and suddenly asked, is there any magic that can increase the level of devil fruit? For example, it can make the originally weak devil fruit of the phantom beast species become very strong. Master, I'm helping you check. Uncle, for this requirement you can use the 34,572nd forbidden magic, fusion. As long as two different devil fruits are put together and fused together, a more powerful devil fruit can be produced. Close black lens bracket. Cheng Cheng's eyes suddenly widened, his heart pounding, he took a deep breath and became excited, and immediately started searching. The pages of the book were flying so fast that it was hard to see clearly. In the process of searching for magic, he unknowingly reached the foot of the mountain. The boss of Caitian God Axe, who was lying in ambush at the foot of the mountain, looked at the man walking down the mountain with a hesitant expression. They had been lying in wait at the foot of the mountain for nearly 2 hours, and they had been soaked by the heavy rain for half an hour. If he hadn't looked at the old man Edward's face, he would have had already run out of patience and rushed up the mountain. When he just watched the man coming down the mountain from a distance, he didn't feel anything unusual, but after seeing the white-haired beggar walk in, Caitian Shanks felt something was wrong. Such a heavy rainstorm actually bypassed him on its own, and there was a book floating behind him. He had never seen such a big book before, and it was an eye-opener today. Boss, that white-haired boy is down the mountain, let's do it. Yes, he has now left old Edward's territory. Even if we do something here, it doesn't break the rules. We have been waiting here for so long. We can't suffer here in vain. Today we have to do anything to kill this fat sheep. The other brothers of the Divine Axe Gang were talking on the sidelines, all gearing up. Bang bang bang. Advertisement. The boss of Caitian God Axe slapped them hard on the head, his voice was clear and loud, and he said angrily. Do it, do it, do it all day long. Are the heads you carry on your shoulders just for admiration? Look carefully, the heavy rain is going around it. Is this something ordinary people can do? One brother said. Boss, if nothing else goes wrong, this person should be a devil fruit user. Don't worry, his fruit may happen to be an umbrella fruit or a raincoat fruit, otherwise he wouldn't be so depressed. Don't we still have sea tower stone iron chains? By then, as long as we tie him up, no matter what kind of fruit he is, he will lose his ability. Quote. Boss, according to my observation, this person is still a nerd. Look at him, he has been reading for so long, and he probably hasn't noticed us. How about I go up and tie him up with a sea tower stone chain first by surprise? Won't we just do whatever we want to do with it after that? Kai Tian Shen Axe narrowed his eyes, carefully weighing the pros and cons, and then took a look at the B*********** D rainstorm weather. If he just went back like this, he would really be sorry for the 2 hours that more than 100 of them were soaked in the rain. I'll just follow what you said, but to be sure, I can't do it alone. The second child, the fifth child, the sixth child, the eighth child, and Hammer, the 5 of us will go there. He continued to remind. Remember, when the time comes, move more quickly, put away the murderous aura in your body, and be smart, you know. The people whose names were called were all his confidants, and they always acted in a measured manner, so he didn't say much. The 5 of them bypassed the apple forest and came to the mountain road. They walked forward normally, as if they were dressed like local fruit farmers. A few of them walked forward with smiles on their faces, looking harmless to humans and animals. The closer they got to the white-haired beggar in front of them, the brighter their smiles became, because they could feel that the white-haired beggar in front of them had been flipping through the book and didn't notice them at all. When the two sides were within 10 meters, Cheng Cheng still didn't notice them. He was immersed in the ocean of knowledge and couldn't extricate himself. Kai Tianshan Axe and the others came to Cheng Cheng with smiles on their faces, slowed down and asked, this little brother, can you help us? While they were talking, the other 3 people unknowingly came around behind Cheng Cheng and surrounded him. Without waiting for Cheng Cheng to answer, the man behind him had sharp eyes and swung the sea tower stone chain towards Cheng Cheng with extremely skillful movements. Chapter 351 Take a breath of royal air. The sea floor stone chain whizzed through the air and penetrated the dense rain. When it was about to approach Cheng Cheng, all the chains broke and turned into powder in the air. Then everyone felt an extremely powerful and shocking aura, as if a peerless ferocious beast was roaring at them. The energy field caused entirely by the momentum instantly enveloped the world, and the surrounding heavy rain suddenly stopped, and the rain field with a radius of 100 meters was strangely suspended in the air and motionless. Caitian Shenshu and the 5 of them just felt a shocking momentum, and everyone was frightened to death. They all rolled their eyes and fainted in the rain. The invisible momentum spread on the ground, causing a series of water waves, and the hundreds of people from the God Axe gang who were ambushing nearby fainted one after another. It was only then that Cheng Cheng realized what he was doing. Looking at the few little frog thieves lying on the ground in the rain, he realized that he had been attacked by a sneak attack and sighed helplessly. It seems we need to find a quieter place. System, teleport to the machine island. Open black lens bracket as you command, sir. Close black lens bracket. With a flash of white light, Cheng Cheng's figure instantly disappeared into the heavy rain. The rainwater suspended in the sky regained its gravity and rushed towards the earth. In the afternoon, the rain gradually stopped and the sky became brighter. The thick clouds in the sky were rimmed with gold, and the sun shone through the clouds, and a huge circular rainbow appeared on the top of the mountain. Klein, who had practiced swordsmanship hard all afternoon, walked in front of his master and skipped down the mountain, waving the big kitchen knife in his hand. She felt that this sword was tailor-made for her. It was too overbearing. It turned out that the blue sword was slung around her waist and became an inconspicuous decoration. I'm really looking forward to seeing the fifth emperor again. I really hope he can bring his apprentice here soon. I will definitely take her to eat all over the Apple Kingdom. Klein said excitedly. The old man said leisurely from behind. Then why don't you seize the time to practice? That person said that her apprentice is more talented than you in sword practice, and is younger than you. He won't be able to defeat him when the time comes. Let's see if you are embarrassed. Quote. Klein pursed his lips and said, what is there to be ashamed of? Master, can't you defeat the fifth emperor? Then, as an apprentice, I cannot defeat the fifth emperor's apprentice. Isn't that normal? The old man was choked to the point of being unable to speak. He raised his hand and gestured to hit him. Advertisement. Klein quickened his pace, jumped 30 meters away, and landed lightly, floating to the foot of the mountain. As she walked, she muttered in a low voice, although it is normal to be unable to defeat the disciples of Lord Five Emperors, the difference cannot be too great, otherwise Lord Five Emperors will definitely think that I am a waste. No, it seems that I can no longer sleep secretly from now on. Quote. Then she suddenly felt her feet go weak, and when she looked down, she didn't know when she had stepped on the head of Caitian Divine Axe. Ah, she screamed strangely and hurriedly retreated, thinking for a moment that all these people were dead. However, at this time, Caitian Shenshu, who had a muddy footprint on his face, woke up in a daze, looked around, and only when he saw Klein said, Miss, what's wrong with me? Big Axe, you're not dead. Why are you lying on the ground? Are you here to touch porcelain? After Klein regained his composure, he realized that he was still an acquaintance. As long as he was not dead, he had nothing to do with her. He continued, and you guys, why are you lying on the ground? Oh, I understand. Do you want to steal my apples? Caitian Divine Axe, who was called Big Axe, had a flattering smile on his face and said, Miss, how dare we have such thoughts? After you punished us last time, we people have long been surrendered by you. Have you forgotten? Klein waved the big kitchen knife in his hand and said, did you see that? I have a new weapon, and my combat power has doubled. I just don't have anyone to practice with. Come over to the mountain tomorrow, and we will spar. Quote. Caitian Shanks was so frightened that he took a few steps back and said, Miss, my little body and bones can't stand your torment anymore. My stomach and intestines haven't been feeling well these past few days, so just let me go. No. Klein glared, raised the big kitchen knife in his hand, and said, if you don't agree, let's discuss it now. Agreed, agreed. The Caitian god Axe, who swept all the mountains in the Apple Kingdom and became the only boss of the bandits, nodded repeatedly. It was not like he really couldn't beat this little girl. The so-called sword has no eyes. If a fight really frightens the hands, let alone hurt this little girl, or just give her a scar on her face, then old man Edward will have to hack him to death. Advertisement. At that moment, his heart was filled with fear. The worst he could do was let the little girl beat him again. He continued to ask. Miss, who was the white-haired beggar who walked down the mountain before? Where did he come from? But I saw him going up the mountain without your permission. Therefore, our brothers feel that this person is very suspicious, and he has come to escort you. Quote. Klein narrowed his eyes and stepped forward, staring into the eyes of Caitian Shanks, and asked. You didn't attack him, did you? Kai Tianshan Axe subconsciously felt a hint of danger, and hurriedly shook his head and said. No, 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 how can he? He is dressed like a beggar, where does the money come from? Klein then stopped looking, looked at the big kitchen knife in his hand, and said proudly. Have you ever heard of the boss of the Black Justice Pirates? Miss, please stop joking. In this world today, who doesn't know the fame of the fifth emperor Cheng Cheng? He overturned the marine headquarters and went to the Holy Land to kill ruthless people. Even my 3-year-old child, the 6th child, I know the fifth emperor Cheng Cheng. Having said this, Kai Tianshan Axe suddenly widened his eyes, and a chill that penetrated his heart suddenly surged up from the soles of his feet to his forehead, as if he had fallen into an ice cellar. They remembered that the legendary Five Emperor Cheng Cheng had white hair, was very young, and his weapon was a broadsword called Junhai. These people stood on their heads and asked. Are you trying to say that that beggar is? Klein raised the big kitchen knife in his hand high, shining with dazzling golden light under the sunlight, and said proudly. Did you see it? It's a gift from my brother Cheng Cheng. Kai Tianshan Axe and the 5 of them were all dumbfounded for a while, speechless for a long time. Who would dare to borrow the name of the 5 emperors? That would be tantamount to courting death. 2 of the timid brothers had their legs weak and fell to the ground, their eyes dull. He swallowed and unconsciously stretched out his hand to touch the weapon given by the 5th emperor Cheng Cheng. He saw a flash of light from the big kitchen knife, and the tip of the knife fell on his neck in an instant. What are you doing? Don't touch Zangetsu with your dirty hands. Klein said coldly. Kai Tianshan Axe smiled even more flatteringly and said, Miss, no, Aunt, please let me play a little while to get some royal air. Chapter 352 Ultraman Regato. Guan Island is covered with ice for thousands of miles and heavy snow covers the sky. The sky is always gray and it is hard to tell whether it is morning or afternoon. On the highest iceberg, in order not to be disturbed by other people, Cheng Cheng opened a hole on the top of the iceberg. The space at the entrance is very small, less than 10 square meters, which is the size of an ordinary house. To be sure, Cheng Cheng quickly learned another ice magic and froze the entrance of the cave. From the outside, the entrance of the cave merged with the mountain, and you would not even notice that there was a cave here. In addition, Guan Island itself is sparsely populated. In this cold weather, no one will risk their lives to climb the highest iceberg. After the surroundings fell into silence, Cheng Cheng suspended the half-meter-thick magic book in front of him and carefully considered the role of this forbidden magic fusion. The introduction of fusion magic is not complicated. You can fuse any two items with the same basic attributes to achieve a higher level. As for the complicated magic array diagram and the extremely long magic spell that needs to be chanted, with Cheng Cheng's current mental strength, he can almost never forget it after just one look. After reading all the instructions on fusion magic from beginning to end, Cheng Cheng put the magic book aside and held the Dragon Slayer knife in his hand to use it as a magic wand. On the tip of the knife, golden light flashed, like a small firework, blooming with golden light in the cave. Then with a thought in his mind, the dragon-slaying sword floated alone on the ground, with the tip of the blade downward, and then hovered a fist distance from the ground. Controlling the sword with his heart, the dragon-slaying sword quickly slid in the void, leaving behind a trail of golden track. Finally, when the Dragon Slayer sword stopped, a golden six-pointed star magic circle hovered on the ground in front of Cheng Cheng. The magic circle is shining with golden light and full of mysterious atmosphere. The outside of the magic circle is a circle, and the edges are engraved with densely packed words. They are not English letters, but a very obscure ancient symbol. Each symbol has a stroke and a stroke. Each and every one of them is full of mysterious power. It is like the initial symbol that contains the atmosphere of the Great Road from ancient times, when the world first opened. Advertisement. The 6 corner positions of the hexagram correspond to 6 different symbols. You can also identify what these symbols are, namely an ancient cross, an eye, a scale, a concentric circle, a moon, and a sun. Every hieroglyphic symbol is full of the mysterious atmosphere of Kangoo. When the magic circle appears, the entire cave is illuminated by golden light. If Cheng Cheng hadn't blocked the entrance of the cave in advance, I'm afraid this golden light would have ejected from the entrance of the cave and penetrated the entire island, leaving a mysterious legend in the hearts of the indigenous people who didn't know the real situation. The golden light slowly converged and became softer. Cheng Cheng nodded with satisfaction and said to himself, not bad, it was successful the first time. He had no magic power, so he could only learn another energy transfer magic in advance, which could convert sword energy into magic energy. But despite this, he still felt a huge consumption. Just by carving this magic circle, fine lines appeared on his forehead, beads of sweat. With a thought, 6 devil fruits fell from the phantom beast spirit tree at the same time, flew out of the ring space, and landed in the center of the fusion magic circle. The 6 are all Ultraman phantom beast devil fruits, namely Zafei, Leo, Mebius, Xiaoming, Hikari, and Zeta. Because this was his first time, Cheng Cheng decided to try it with 6 Ultraman fruits with the same attributes. Cheng Cheng's lips moved slightly, and a strange voice sounded in the cave. It was not loud, but it was full of mysterious power and could shock people's hearts. The sound seemed to come from an unknown mysterious world, sacred and vast, like the murmuring of the dominant god between heaven and earth. Original Great Saint Hexagram from the sacred world, release the great light like the stars. Follow my will, integrate all things. After the magic chanting ended, the 6-pointed star flashed with golden light, and thousands of large and small symbols on the magic circle floated in the air, rapidly rotating and combining, as if performing some kind of complex calculation. After 2 minutes, the symbols stopped running and froze in the air, as if the time and space in the magic circle had stopped flowing. The 2 devil fruits in the middle suddenly glowed with golden light, like a sun, blooming with thousands of golden lights, making Cheng Cheng dare not look directly at them. After a while, the golden light became weaker. Cheng Cheng looked forward and found that the devil fruit had turned into one, and this one looked different from the original 6. It was actually glowing. Although the light emitted was very soft, but it's really shining. This is something Cheng Cheng has never encountered before. Advertisement. He quickly put on his sunglasses, looked forward, opened his mouth wide, and laughed to the sky. The laughter echoed throughout the cave. Through the sunglasses, it is revealed that this phantom beast devil fruit is Ultraman Regato, one of the mysterious 4. Ultraman Regato was called a legendary warrior by the space prophet Dracian. Dracian was in awe of him, and the ultimate life form Absolute Tartarus did not dare to face him. The existence of confrontation. Cheng Cheng remembered that his special move was the strongest ultimate skill in the universe, Spark Legend, which mobilized the energy of the entire universe and released it in one breath. It's a pity. Although he is also very awesome, he is only a 10-second real man after all. It would be great if the fusion was another one of the mysterious 4 Ultraman Noah. But now it is difficult for him to fuse the Ultraman fruit again, because all the Ultraman Phantom Beast fruits have been used up, unless he waits for the next Ultraman fruit to appear. Next, Cheng Cheng turned his attention to several other devil fruits, which are fairy fruits in Chinese mythology, including Heavenly Soldiers and Heavenly Generals, 6 Ding Lugia, Big Dipper Lord, 8 Immortals, and 9 Glory Stars. If you fuse these fairy fruits, you might be able to fuse them into a powerful Deluo Golden Immortal. Just do it. Cheng Cheng's hands and feet kept busy. 3 days later, hundreds of miles away in the plain, the indigenous people here have discovered a strange phenomenon. The top of the tallest iceberg in the distance has been unusual recently. Every once in a while, you can see the entire top of the mountain turning golden and shining with golden light. At first, many people thought they had seen it wrong, but the golden light kept appearing many times. Some people even rumored that the iceberg was actually filled with gold. It was a golden mountain. So many indigenous people spontaneously formed gold digging teams and went to the mountains to dig for gold, but something strange happened. The wind and snow near the iceberg became very strong, but it was very calm in other places. The strong wind that stepped into the iceberg range can kill an adult. In the past few days, since the strong wind blew away the 3 fat men, no natives dared to set foot there again. In the days that followed, this iceberg gradually became known as the Holy Mountain, attracting countless believers to worship. Chapter 353 Shinpangu City. Holy Land, Marie Joya. Half a month later, the ruins of Pangu City have been cleared long ago, and now most of the main buildings have been completed. The new Pangu City is taller and larger, twice as high as the original Pangu City, reaching into the sky. There are 108 floors in total. The railings and handrails on the first floor are all carefully crafted and engraved with intricate patterns. They are extremely luxurious. They were built by architectural devil fruit users invited from all over the world. They can easily accommodate 5,000 people. At that time, all the celestial dragons in the Holy Land will move into it. The new Pangu City walls also use thickened steel, and some sea tower stones are scattered here and there. The building is extremely strong. If nothing goes wrong, it will not appear even if it stands for hundreds of thousands of years. Any problem? The tall and majestic Shinpan ancient city is like a giant god-tier spirit towering between heaven and earth, standing on the red earth continent and suppressing the 4 seas. However, 6 days ago, all construction work on the Holy Land construction was stopped like Russia, and various decoration works were not continued. Because in the past month, there have often been huge vibrations on the ground near the Holy Land, and every time there was a vibration, the ground would become scalding hot. Another shock shocked all the Tianlong people on the ground. At the same time, they felt as if the ground was being steamed by fire, and the temperature became extremely hot. It only lasted for less than 10 minutes, and all the people on the surface of the Holy Land were shaken. The water in rivers, lakesides, and landscape pools has all evaporated, and the land has dried up. The original bottom of the lake was like a dry land that had not seen water for more than 10 years. When had those celestial dragons ever seen such a scene? The last earthquake 6 days ago was the largest. Centered on the ground of the newly built Pangu City, the ground protruded nearly 3 meters, and cracks appeared in a radius of 100 meters. Red flames spurted out from the cracks, making these people have to suspect that there is a volcano hidden underground that may erupt at any time. Therefore, Shinpangu City, which invested a lot of energy and financial resources, had to suspend construction and stop losses in time. If an underground volcano really erupts one day in the future, Pangu City will definitely be reduced to ashes in an instant. Such a powerful volcanic eruption cannot be stopped by human power. Even the 5 elders personally admitted that once the volcano erupts, they will not be able to stop it. Not only would the buildings not be preserved, but these powerless celestial dragons would also be swallowed up instantly. So after discussion, the 5 elders made a major decision. Move. Advertisement. Move the Holy Land eastward from the Red Earth continent. As long as they stay away from here, even if the volcano erupts, it will not threaten them. As for the investment regardless of cost in building Shinpangu City, we can only forcibly abandon it. Today, these Tianlong people in the Holy Land have already started packing their luggage and slowly preparing for the relocation. As for the relocation location, it is the original Fire Clan's territory 100 miles away. After the Holy Land War, the Fire Clan basically existed in name only. There were only more than 1,000 women, elderly people and children left in the entire tribe, all of whom had no fighting ability. It turns out that the Fire Clan, as the guardian of the Celestial Dragons, has now lost its original value. Faced with the Celestial Dragons' proposal to relocate, no one of them protested, and they were not qualified to negotiate other conditions with the Celestial Dragons. Keldra, this is the tribal center of the Fire Clan, where the tribe leader lives. Almost all the tribesmen who are still alive have moved here from scattered places to maintain the continuation of the incense of their tribe. The blonde old man and the old man with long white hair came here, followed by more than a dozen people with building fruit abilities. When the elders and children in the tribe saw these people, they were very respectful and put their right palms on their hearts to show respect to them. Meet the 5 elders. Hello, sir. These women and old people all said hello, but the 2 5 elders who came to explore the way seemed not to notice, and walked towards the position of the tribe leader with a calm look on their faces. These people from the Fire Clan have rarely seen the 5 elders come to their place, and some of the 5 or 6-year-old children only saw them for the first time today. Sir, this is roasted corn that my mother has just made. It's delicious. Try it. It also has our secret sauce on it. A 6-year-old boy had flames on his fingers and held up 2 golden roasted corns in his other hand. The surface was roasted brown and oily, exuding an alluring fragrance. He raised the roasted corns and walked to the 5 elders. Said with a smile. Originally, the corn was roasted by his mother for him to eat, but the boy, who had never seen the celestial dragons before, was so happy to see them that he wanted to share it with them. The young woman on the side had no chance to stop her. Boom. There was an explosion, and the blonde old man then shot out a stream of air, scattering the 2 roasted corns and exploding in the air. The golden corn kernels fell into the air like a goddess scattering flowers. Advertisement. Go away, if you block the road again I'll punch you to death. The blonde old man's voice was cold and he walked forward silently. When other women and elderly people on the street saw this, they hugged their sons and took them home, watching them warily. The little boy held up half of the roasted corn and froze on the spot. The next moment he burst into tears. Why are the 5 elders so cruel? Aren't we their guardians? Then why don't they thank us at all? The young couple rushed over and knelt on the ground to hug their son. They were speechless for a moment and didn't know how to explain to their child. In the past, those celestial dragons would be polite when they came to their tribe, but now that they no longer have the power to protect the celestial dragons, they have also lost the qualification to talk to them on an equal footing. And her husband also died tragically in that battle in the Holy Land. She thought about it and said to her son, "Don't think so much, you must become strong. As long as you become strong enough, everyone will smile at you, and anything you give away will be treated as a peerless treasure." Mother, I understand. The boy clenched his fist suddenly, and hot flames rose up, wrapping his fist. He looked at the leaving figures of the 5 elders and said coldly, "They are bullying me for not having a father. I will definitely become stronger." The woman's eyes suddenly turned red and she covered her mouth tightly. In the patriarch's palace, a blonde woman was reading newspapers from all over the world. She is Phyllis, the wife of Troy, the leader of the Fire Clan. After Troy died, she became the new leader according to the tradition of the clan. The golden holy fire representing the Fire Clan also naturally fell on her. A golden flame mark was condensed between her eyebrows. She was slender, fair-skinned, and dressed in a red robe. She sat there elegantly, and was an undisputed beauty. Her face was expressionless, like a fiery red lotus in the water, unconventional. Boom. There was a loud noise, and the closed wooden door of the main hall suddenly exploded, sending sawdust flying. Felice Farici Bubo raised her head and looked out the door, only to see the blonde old man and the old man with long white hair standing outside the door, filled with murderous intent. Chapter 354 Migration. The blonde old man looked at the main hall with a cold expression and said, "Phyllis, didn't I tell you to move out? Why haven't you moved yet?" In the great hall of the Huahuo clan, there were originally military officers and officials gathered together, and there were many guards. Now there are only 2 female guards in yellow left behind Felice. They stared at the 5 elders one by one, as if they wanted to kill them with their eyes. Phyllis held the newspaper tightly with her 5 fingers, her slender fingertips turned white from exerting too much force, and said, "You, the Draco, can live in the entire Keldra as you please, but I cannot give it to you here. This is what he and I share. Built brick by brick, this is not only the tribal meeting hall, but also my home. Hey, do you think we Tianlong people have been miserable recently, so you dare to speak to us like this?" The blonde old man stared at Phyllis, exuding powerful waves of air that instantly blew over all the tables and chairs around him, and said in a cold voice, "I'm just informing you, when will I have to discuss it with you? Husband, have you seen this? This is the person you have been protecting so far. Even if you fight and die for him, in the end your home will be robbed by the celestial dragons. I told you not to leave. You just don't listen." Phyllis smiled miserably, stood up slowly, the golden flame mark between her eyebrows flickered with golden light, and suddenly sprayed out a ball of golden flame, wrapping her whole body. The scorching flames caused the temperature in the hall to rise rapidly, causing the air to become extremely distorted. The surface of the wooden tables in the hall instantly became cracked, peeled, and charred black, emitting streams of black smoke. The tables and chairs around her instantly turned into ashes and turned into piles of black powder. She stared at the people in front of her, her eyes full of anger, and said angrily, "You old, immortal B*************, you don't know how to repay your kindness, but you bite me in return. If that's the case, then go to hell." The blonde old man narrowed his eyes and said in surprise, "Golden holy fire. It seems that Troy still left some good things for you, but it would be ridiculous to try to defeat me with this." As soon as he finished speaking, the blonde old man's expression suddenly changed, and his body shot out like a cannonball, causing bursts of sonic booms, and he said quickly, "Stop this crazy woman quickly, she is going to destroy the hall." The old man with long white hair also changed his expression, and flew out. At the same time, he waved his big hand, and a 6-layer energy barrier instantly enveloped Felice. There is a strange stream of light flowing on the surface of each layer of energy barrier, crystal clear, like glass with dots of stars, sparkling, and looking like a crystal ball. Advertisement. The burning and spreading golden flame exudes a sacred and clean aura, seeming to purify all things. The scorching high temperature at the moment of expansion and burning swallows up the 2 energy shields in an instant. The other 4 layers of energy shields wrap the golden flames, looking like a golden fireball. The 4 layers of energy shields only lasted less than a second before they shattered. Boom. The golden flame broke free from the energy barrier and exploded, making bursts of strong explosions. All items in the hall spontaneously ignited under the scorching heat. However, at this moment, the blonde old man also arrived in front of Phyllis. He stretched out his hand to take a photo from high above and shouted. Let me go. The black light entwined in his palm, and slapping it hard seemed to contain endless ferocious momentum, as if covering the sky with one hand, trying to smash all the sinful karma in the world. Boom. The black palm instantly fell on Felice's head, easily penetrating the pair of golden flames that were not afraid of ordinary water. Felice suddenly spurted out a mouthful of blood, her life was gone, and she fell limply to the ground. The old man with long white hair coming from behind released an astonishing momentum and instantly extinguished the flames burning elsewhere in the hall. These golden flames had no source support and were no different from ordinary flames. Blood flowed down the top of Phyllis's head. She was killed in one blow with her eyes open and her right hand holding tightly, as if she was protecting something more valuable than life. It is so precious that even if all the Fire Clan's halls are destroyed, this thing cannot be destroyed. The blonde old man discovered this keenly. He squatted down and opened Felice's slender fingers one by one. Every time he opened one, he could hear the sound of bones breaking. The obsession is so heavy. It seems that it must be a good thing of the Fire Clan. The blonde old man chuckled, but the next moment he saw the thing, he immediately became irritated. As if he had been tricked, he punched the corpse to pieces and blood spattered. What Felice held in her hand was just an ordinary gold ring. Advertisement. Holy Land, Marie Joya. The Tianlong people who usually rarely go out are all busy now, packing their luggage and packing necessary items at home. They have received clear orders and are preparing to move to the Fire Tribe in the east. In the past, these noble celestial dragons would have disdained to go to such a barren place, but now he had to go in order to take refuge. The shaking on the ground became stronger every time, and maybe it would shake a few more times, and the entire Holy Land would be shaken. All will be destroyed. For the sake of my life, I still have to leave. The environment is not good, the architecture is not good, these can all be rectified, but if lives are lost, there really is nothing left. St. Miles is an old man with gray hair, over 70 years old, and his skin is still rosy now. He has learned the health-preserving method. He often teaches other celestial dragons about health-preserving tips, so he has always been popular among the celestial dragons. But he was also most afraid of death. At this time, he was the first to pack his things. There were more than a dozen large cars parked in front of his house, piled with treasures and treasures he usually collected. There were a total of 12 young girls in the first car, all wearing slave collar bombs, with sad faces. It didn't matter where they went, because as long as they wore that collar, it would be hell no matter where they were. For St. Miles, these girls are his treasures. Each one of them is carefully trained by him, otherwise they would not be placed there. On the first car. Hurry, hurry, it's going to be dark soon. We'd better leave before dark. The sooner we get there, the better. Miles Saint kept urging at the door of the house, saying, I have an unknown premonition recently, especially today I feel inexplicably agitated. Those old guys can just wait if they want. We can't wait any longer. In the courtyard, the old man's sons were still cleaning up the treasures and whipping the slaves who worked slowly. I understand, father, we only have 20 minutes at most, and we can leave right away. A middle-aged man with a bloated figure said. Boom. At this moment, a violent vibration came from the ground, and everyone shook violently and became unstable, as if the ground was about to crack.